Well, hello everybody and welcome back on this fine Thursday evening or afternoon or morning or midnight, depending on where you're watching this, around the globe. And this is once again the Ventauri Pro Series, round number 4 of the inaugural season. And we head this time to what I termed last week as the glorified go-kart track. It is the Red Bull Ring in Austria. We're in the Styrian Hills, and this could be an absolute barnstorm. Really looking forward to this one. The championship battle shaping up pretty nicely as well. We'll get into that one in not too long. But in commentary corner, commandeering, slightly different duo, no more infestation of Tom squared. It is myself, Tom Wilkinson, and for the first time, John Harris eyes amusing alongside me. John, how are you doing?
That's great to be here, to be fair. It's a lovely afternoon that we've had. A lot of good weather across Europe, and so we're hoping for good weather at Austria today as well. And what a track. As you said, glorified go-kart track. You have to send it a little bit sideways in the corners to get that extra rotation. Battery, very important here as well. So I'm sure drivers are going to be tripping up over each other. But in commentary corner, we love that.
We absolutely do. Welcome in everybody that is joining us for the action. If you are new, firstly, make yourself comfortable. Full qualifying on the agenda. Q1, Q2, Q3. Then we have a little break, little interlude in between. And then we get into a 50% race. That equates to 36 laps around the Red Bull Ring. And firstly, let's have a little look at where it's been in the past and where we're heading in the future. Because, as that's oddly sized, we head over. We'll look at the standings instead. We'll forget about the calendar for the time being. Standings going into this one. It is Joris Krozen, but on a bit of a technicality because Angelo D'Ortenzio was very briefly a back-to-back Grand Prix winner. However, a post-race penalty dropped him down to P4 at the end, and that leaves Joris Krozen with a 3-point advantage at the summit in the championship. But the top 4 with Liam Stevens, who's been really consistent, he inherited the victory from D'Ortenzio a week ago. That top 4 separated by just 8 points. With a big cluster of cars in the 30s as well, Rapasa, Tamas Gal, Julian Klaffenburg and Sergio Sabrina, who won in round 1 and we haven't actually seen since. So championship battle very, very hotly contested, and that is exactly what we want to see, John, isn't it?
That's a funny one for Sergio. Just wins one race, drops the mic and leaves. But it's all about momentum. When you've got such close racing, so many talented drivers, you have to have confidence. And we're seeing that in the standings of just some drivers able to exploit that, able to have a little bit of like a psychological advantage. And around Austria, where you've got to be last and late breakers, that is going to come into effect as well. Qualifying around this track, I'm not sure what you'd say, Tom. Probably like a medium importance for qualifying.
Especially on this game, with the drivers pushing so hard. The battery games, this is the circuit where we think overtaking is going to be a little bit easier than it might have been beforehand. I'm fascinated to see how it shapes up. If we look at the lineups, the drivers that we've got competing this evening, it is a lot of familiar faces. Marcel Paps, a notable returnee in the McLaren, taking the place of Luca Rapasa, who retired a week ago after winning the very first social race. Hasn't had the best of ride of it since, but we have got a championship leader, Joris Krozen, Tycho Hayu there, Angelo D'Ortenzio as well. It is an incredibly stacked driver lineup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of show these drivers can put on around a circuit. John, we have to talk about the Red Bull Ring. We're moments away from getting into Q1, but it's a really enjoyable track to race at, isn't it?
Yeah, I will say it's my favourite, actually, to drive. One, because I really am bad at braking, so the heavy braking zones, sometimes with less trail braking, it's actually a lot easier for me to get on the pace. But enough talking about my bad driving. It's one of those tracks you've got to attack the curbs, but it's a bit of an old school one because there are gravel traps. If you do get it wrong, it will be the end of your lap, and in the race, it will be the end of fighting for position. So it's one of those tracks you have to leave maybe 1,000th of a second per corner on the track just to make sure that you validate that lap. And getting a banker lap in will be important because, again, around this track where there's a lot of propensity to trip over a driver, especially in qualifying 1, as we're seeing right now, you've got to put it on the board.
Absolutely. Now, if you are new as well, we do need to make this clear. We are running the multiplayer cars for qualifying only, and that will become clear as we progress through our qualifying session. With it so tightly congested, those fine margins means that because the cars aren't entirely equal, they're not 100% equal, you can maybe just fall on the wrong side of luck. We've had it a couple of times where I think Q1, the elimination in Q1 has been separated by nothing. They've set exactly the same time, and maybe if they were in the F126 cars, albeit on equal cars, but it doesn't quite work that way, then we would have lost a driver that should have found their way into the next part of qualifying. So that is why we're running the multiplayer cars, but do not fret, we will be jumping back into the F126 cars by the time we head into our 50% race. And John, us to be used to this as well. We have got intermediate tyres on the cars for a few of them, and since it is a full qualifying session, they want to try and save these soft compound tyres. Ideally, we want to use just one set through each of the 3 sessions.
Yeah, it opens up the advantage for Quali 3 or indeed for the race if you want to try a different strategy. That is possible around here. The soft tyres are quite useful. You'll use this lap, as always, for just figuring out whether your equipment's working properly. I've on multiple occasions forgotten to turn my wheel on and gone straight into the barrier, for example, on the exit of the pit. So you just want to use the lap to just get a sighter, get a feel for how everything is working, and also just get a feel for your braking points. Maybe a sector in, you'll still have grip in the tyres, although it'll get very slippy and slidey as we go throughout the lap. You've just got to make sure that everything is in working order in your head as well, and just to get the confidence. And as you said, if you've only got one set of tyres, you have to put in that banker lap, and it's just pressure after pressure. Some people love that, other people don't particularly like qualifying. We'll see that come into effect very soon.
And we're expecting the times to be incredibly congested in this qualifying session. One of the shortest circuits on the calendar. We're going to be in around maybe the 103s, maybe a little bit quicker as well. I doubt we'll get into the 102s, let's be honest. But we can already see from the intermediate runs, we've got some drivers very close together as Marcel Paps goes into position number 3. We've got a light on Massetto out on the circuit who has invalidated Conrad Bohm also out there pushing. We just need to, well, invalidated as well. So drivers making mistakes early on, and track limits is a discussion point that we need to have a little bit of a chat about as well, a bit of a chin wag, because you are on the ragged edge around a high-speed circuit like this, as we see a pig slide there for Bohm coming through turn number 7. That was proper armful of opposite lock stuff. But got to be very, very precise with your inputs. When you are pushing really hard, yes, we're going to see some lift and coasting in this qualifying session as you try to regenerate some charge. That is helped, of course, by some of the heavy braking zones, notably up the hill into turn 3 and then back down the hill into turn 4. But you do have to be... There's very little margin for error, isn't it, around a circuit like this? And you don't necessarily think about that because you'd look at Austria and go, not too many corners, high speed, easy circuit to get right. But that's not always the case.
Well, it used to be a track with last year's cars where you just dump the battery every single straight and you still got enough toward the end of the lap, effectively. But there is a problem now, actually. If you get a bit of oversteer, you are losing the battery. You're losing the deployment in the traction. And that means you lose lap time as well, doubly. You get the mistake, and then you don't have the acceleration on the exit of the corner. So it is very, very tricky to manage that battery, and then you're compromised in the regeneration as well. So it just is like a snowball effect that just carries on throughout the lap. So you've got to be very smart in where do you deploy, and it will come down to practice. I think qualifying now, this year, is all about making sure you have everything done to perfection in the preparation for that lap. Probably more than race preparation, to be fair. And looking at those times on the intermediates, I must say it's quite humiliating for me to find, for example, Fabrizio Donoso only maybe a second and a half off of my dry lap pace around here. So I need to get the wheel out after this commentary session.
Don't need to do yourself like that, John. Come on now. But yes, it is Fabrizio Donoso leading the way. Only the 4 times on the intermediates to start the session. We do have this little lull as we wait for the first driver to emerge on the red striped soft compound tyres. Already a third of the way through qualifying 1. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to think that we're probably going to see for the second time this season 16th and 17th separated by pretty much nothing. As we said earlier, happened in China. I think it was Alex Santana who was on the wrong side of that margin. Said exactly the same time as the person that went through into Q2. I think it was Lucas Bison who was on the right side of that one. And that is how close the margins can be. And around a circuit like China, which is over 90 seconds in lap time, if we shrink that down by a third, we're just over 60 seconds, it's going to be really tight. And that means that mistakes are going to be punished very severely. And even the smallest incremental gains you can find on your qualifying lap, they could be worth, what, 4 or 5, maybe more positions.
Yeah, for sure. And I will never stop saying this. It is absolutely incredible how the perfection of driving has got to the level where 1,000th of a second can count. 1,000th of a second can be the difference between you getting through qualifying 1 all the way to qualifying 3 or being eliminated in the first qualifying session. And so it's one of those things where it's all about the mental game as well. It's all about handling that pressure and just not making any mistake whatsoever. And if you put your rivals under pressure, they're going to be the ones that make mistakes. Even at the top level, we've seen it so much in many esports categories for well, in across even GT racing and other motorsports that don't rely necessarily on the battery, if you're putting the foot wrong, you start doubting yourself. And this track with the high-speed corners and the heavy braking zones is one of the worst, I think, for being out of sorts. You can easily lose a tenth of a second, and because it's all about the straight line speed and the battery, because you've got so many straights around here, one mistake, as I said before, it's going to be 2 or 3 tenths dropped. So all about that. It's all about, for Alejandro, getting out, setting a lap. He's deciding to go early. Is that the right strategy? Won't have the best track conditions, but maybe just having that clear headspace will be the right strategy.
And just on that point there, things can really snowball, can't they? Once you make one mistake around a circuit like this where you are on the ragged edge for a majority of the lap. Take turn 1, for example. Yes, you're going to see a little bit of lifting coasting, but you've got to throw the car in there. Big sausage curve at the apex, serrated sausage curve that you can start Tony Hawking over on the exit as well. And you've got to be so precise with your inputs. Here we are with Alejandro Luero, first to attack the circuit on the soft compound tyres as he cranks the steering lock on into the heavy braking zone of turn 3. Back of the car wobbling a little bit as he tries to plant the loud pedal and heads back down the hill into a tricky braking zone of turn 4, especially when you've got a little bit of lift and coasting as you head into it. Off camber corner as well, very easy to lock up that front right in particular. And then this middle sector in the 25 cars was an absolute dream to drive. You could carry so much speed. Now it's turned, as Fernando Alonso likes to call high-speed corners now, into a bit of a recharging station, isn't it? But the final 2 corners as well, even though you're not at full chat, total commitment got to be required to throw it into those.
Yeah, ironically, you want to just lift a little bit into these last 2 corners, just chucking it over the curbs. I think that's still okay. Oh, it's to the ragged edge, a few millimeters within the line, and it will be a 103.7. Incredible work for Alejandro to put that provisional lap in and put the pressure on everyone else. But as you said, it's all about maximizing it, and you could see the traction loss there. That is battery being drained, that is potential being lost in the lap. And the problem around here as well is the tires. They can overheat. It's a very demanding track for both traction and indeed turn in on the front tires, so you've just got to get everything out of it. Now we are going to see a flurry of lap time started as we have everyone on their out laps, and this is Nelson Alves for his starting right now.
Drivers starting to make their way out on the circuit. You can see the sponsor boards lining the track as well. The sponsors and the VPS logo, with Ryan in chat, who you have to say has done an expert job getting those sorted for us. So thank you very much for that, Ryan, and hopefully looking all nice and dandy for you. 15.9 in the first set for Nelson Alves. Really clatters the sausage curb at the apex of turn number 3. Back of the car not stepping out quite as much on traction as it did for Alejandro Luero, who does, of course, have that benchmark of a 103.7. Looking fairly nice for Nelson Alves, who hasn't been brilliant over 1 lap so far this season. Couple of Q1 eliminations already. Needs to try and just extract that a little bit more out of himself, get himself into the fray where you give yourself an opportunity to get into Q3, basically by being there in the first place, which sounds like a Michael Owen quote or a Will Buxton quote, but it does add up.
To qualify on pole position, you have to reach Q3, apparently. That's what I'm being told in my earpiece, in any case, as Nelson goes round the final turn. It's been a tight lap. Oh, was that invalidation? Yes, it was. No, the heavy work was done. And just on the last turn, I will say the flicking of the front tyres just generating a little bit of understeer. And I think that's what might have pushed him across the line, sadly. So that is not going to be the last person that does that, as we have Liam Stevens across the line, a 103.6. So it lowers that benchmark a little bit and proves to other people the track conditions might be improving.
Last week's winner starting strongly. So difficult to try and pick up who's who, because we've got the multiplayer cars, and some of them, or quite a lot of them, are just either white, grey or black dots on the minimap. We pick up Tamas Gal, though, through the sweeps as he enters into the final sector. Liam Stevens with that benchmark time of 103.6, 400ths ahead of Luero. Then comes Bison, Rosen and Conrad Bohm, your top 5. 7 lap times completed on the soft. Simon Engel with an unrepresentative one. But Gal to the line goes into position number 6. As Angelo D'Ortenzio, interestingly enough, still in the pits. We jump back to Tycho Hardy, though, who's very much in the championship fray. Lost the championship lead to Joris Krozen after the race a week ago, but still very much in the fray and looking to try and get a good banker lap on the board.
Indeed, it's looking tidy so far. Good rotation of the car. That's an invalidation, though. And the commentator's curse starts once again. So for Hardy, that will be just a case of maybe having to go and do another lap, do a cool-down lap. I think he'll want to save the tyres, but will it be possible? You know, the margin's so close. For D'Ortenzio, staying in the pit lane right until the very end. It's a vote of confidence for yourself, but it can be sort of like a cake pushed against your face at the end of the session if you don't get through. So we'll have to wait and see. Yours Krozen just waiting to... he's aborted that lap, actually, not on an out lap. That was an actual lap, but it has not gone well. For Stephen Vasso across the line here, it won't be a 113. Well, that's gone disastrously wrong, actually. Probably a mistake there somewhere. So a lot of drivers struggling for laps here. And at the moment, everybody that's set a lap will get through. That becomes irrelevant as Julian Klaffenblock goes into P11, knocking out 2 drivers and now in the drop zone. So now is where crunch time happens.
And Klaffenblock getting a little bit lucky there because was very wide going through the final corner. Angelo D'Ortenzio out on the circuit, back-to-back pole positions for the Ferrari man. Elia Tomasetto very speedy through the first sector, 15.7. One of the last to get a lap time on the board. Still Liam Stevens leading the way ahead of Luero, Beisner, Engel and Cholstos, both of them popping up into 4th and 5th respectively, as we wait to see what the championship protagonists can muster up. With D'Ortenzio yet to get a lap time on the board, just emerging from the pit lane. Tycho Hardy with an invalidation on their first attempt. It feels criminal, doesn't it, as you head through the final corner. You've done everything right, and then you just make a little bit of a blunder right at the end of the lap and throw all of that hard work in the nearest bin that you can find. But Tomasetto looking strong here through the middle sector as well. Little bit of traffic potentially just up the road, back of the car. Really lively there as he throws it into the penultimate corner. Nothing more you can do apart from pull gears to the line, playing with fire on the track limits. And not a particularly quick final sector. Leaves Tomasetto on a 4.1, slowest of the representative times that we've had so far. But now we can jump to the former championship leader, very briefly, the championship leader D'Ortenzio, after he had the victory last week taken away from him post-race.
Well, this has got a little bit of oversteer there into the hairpin, bit too much rotation. I'll compromise both the battery regen and the deployment afterwards. So dropping maybe 1/10 of a second there. He's going to have to work hard in the second sector to keep it up. But looking at the time as well, if he has to back off on this lap, he might have just enough time to go around and do another one. But it's all crunch time and all the pressure on him right now. It's looking like a good sector 2, however, just keeping the commitment, the car rotating very nicely, and that looked like a good sector 2. Didn't exactly catch the sector time right there, but it's in the ballpark. It should be enough at the moment. Last 2 turns all the way over the curb, clattering all 3 curbs through penultimate turn, through the last one. It's wide, it's very wide, but it's enough to keep it on track. Will it be enough? And yes, it is. Look at that. That was lightning pace all the way up to P1.
Really hustling that car. Harrying it was D'Ortenzio, and back to his familiar position at the top of the timing charts. Was fastest in all 3 qualifying sessions a week ago. Will he try and continue in that rich vein of form? We'll have to wait and see as the first of the eager retirements comes in with just over 3 minutes left. Lucas Beisner, the sister Ferrari, thinking they've got enough in hand on that 103.718. And this is where you start sweating bullets a little bit when you see some of the drivers find a decent chunk of time. We've got, look at that, Donoso, Alves, Paps, Krozen, Vaso, Hardy and Vidler yet to get a competitive time on the board. So the complexion could change very, very quickly out there, and that's what we need to be aware of heading into the final runs.
Yeah, it's worth reminding everyone that they set the times. I thought he was on the lap then, though, just going into the gravel trap. But it's worth reminding everyone that the drivers in the drop zone at the moment have not set a time on the dry tyres. All of those times were on intermediates, so they still have a fresh set of tyres here as Liam Stevens going out again for another lap. So not possibly that's a scrub tyre set, but just electing to get a little bit more practice in. Probably he should be safe on that pace as D'Ortenzio retires from the session, but already an invalidation, so just going out for a little bit of practice. This is Nelson Alves, P17 at the moment, so this lap has to be it, and you will not get a second chance. A lot of traffic, though, at the end of the first sector. It's an okay sector 1, but still work to do, and still cars in the way.
Yeah, going to find himself under a little bit of pressure. Needs to pick up the pace a little bit, Nelson Alves. On the bubble very much. Hasn't got the banker lap time either that he can try and rely on. We'll have to wait and see what Alves can manage as we head up towards the middle sector split. Oh, he's still trying to take chunks of time out of it. 3 retirees so far, D'Ortenzio, Beisner and Chonstos. 2 seconds found so far. Obviously not overly representative, hence the intermediate banker lap time that Alves has got at the moment, 107.5. It'll be touch and go as to whether there's an opportunity to try and get round again. But through the final corner we go with Alves. This needs to be pretty speedy. Up to the line, mid-6 will be the target. It's a mid-3 will be the target, sorry. It's a 3.8, 13th only. Leaves yourself sweating a little bit.
Well, when you've got people like Donoso on the lap, that's for sure. You have to do it. Klaffenbach as well in the danger zone. It's a better 1.5 tenths up on his time, so that should boost him up the leaderboard if he can keep it on the tarmac. So this will be a very high pressure lap, and obviously using another set of tires as well. Oh, it's so close to an invalidation. He does get it by though. This should boost him up the order, and it does comfortably. The track is improving a lot, however, so this should be able to give the drivers toward the back of the pack with a set of tires to use. It will give them an advantage, and for drivers that went sooner, this may be their undoing.
Quintino, we jump on board with now. Nelson Alves has been pushed right to the precipice here. 16th fastest. I don't think there's necessarily the opportunity for Alves to go again. So sitting right on the bubble on that 3.8. Quintino finding 600ths of a second through Sector 1 and Sector 2. Microscopic margins will be very, very important. Like gold dust, these small incremental gains. Alves still 16th improvement. I think that's for Jensen Rosen up to P4. Stevens is done in the pit lane. Quintino almost invalidates. Round the final corner, 18th at the moment, stays in 18th, make that 19th as Tomasetto goes 11th. Problems for himself and Alves. Fabrizio Donoso finding time on the soft tyres. Paps and Crozen still to come as well. Victor Vidler not improving and retiring in the pits. That leaves Santana now on the bubble. Tycho Hardy still out there pushing as well. Gabor Chonstos very much looking over his shoulder, retired early on, now finds himself down in P14. Donoso only 18th. So that's another driver gone, and we wait for Paps and Crozen.
Oh, that's a big one right there. Fabrizio Donoso not getting through. He'll be so disappointed with that. And yeah, Crozen does get through there, P13. And is that, I think Paps is still on a lap here in the representative lap. So the last driver that could eliminate Santos if he's unlucky. So let's see. Oh, it's a bad last turn though. Just clouting the curb a little bit. Will it be enough? I don't think it was. No, well, 103.9, the slowest time. It could have been so different with that last turn, however.
And a big shock in 17th. Tycho Hardy knocked out in the first part of qualifying, misses it by 5 milliseconds. Gabor Chonstos was in P5 after the first runs, ends the session in P16, judges it absolutely to perfection, but a couple of mistakes out there. I'm thinking for Hardy and for Vidler in particular, just sparing the blushes there of Chonstos, who squeaks through on just the one set of tyres.
Yeah, I mean, that will give him a little bit more of an opportunity for strategies, but it's so risky, as we've seen. Some drivers only electing to use one set of tyres and have found themselves now in the elimination zone. So that's it for their qualifying. The only thing that you can think of in terms of positivity is maybe they've got another set of tyres now for the race. Maybe they can use that to their advantage. It's a little bit of a long shot, but around the track like this, at least you can overtake. So it's not like you're going to Monaco and you're dead last, effectively. So it'll be interesting to see in the second qualifying session.
The D'Ortenzio fastest, comfortably through with just the one and done run, but the 6 to make way. Marcel Paps slowest, then Gabriel Quintino, Nelson Alves, Fabrizio Donoso, Victor Vidler, and second in the championship, Tycho Hardy, make way. Top 16, well, let's have a look at this. Top 18 covered by less than 0.2 of a second. Tycho Hardy missing it by 5 milliseconds in the end. And that is what we were expecting around this circuit. The margins so tight. And unfortunately, somebody was going to have to fall on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks where a banker lap, a safe lap, isn't good enough. You just have to go flat out right from the get-go and hope that you get a lap in. And I think that's what these drivers are just banking on, effectively, just absolutely flat out right from start to finish. The only problem is if you've used too many tires and you mess up the lap now in qualifying 2, you don't have another opportunity. So I think maybe some drivers might be caught short in this qualifying session. And especially if you invalidate, you go over a curb. Well, over a lap, you'll probably lose about 1.5 tenths just in terms of tyre performance if you have to go round again. So the opportunity's very short in terms of recovery.
Absolutely. And it could leave you up a particular creek without a paddle. There it is, though. Bernd Mailander for the 3rd week in a row, making his way out of the pits. We just can't have a week without the appearance of Bernd Mailander, everybody. We'll have to wait and see where he pops up. We aren't obviously able to ride on board, but once again, we have an extra contender in qualifying 2. He's going to make for a very interesting spectacle. Yes, you can, of course, go through Bernd, but he is going to be a little bit off-putting for people as we do see the mad rush out of pit road right at the start of the session. First out, I believe it is going to be D'Ortenzio. Yes, it is going to be Angelo D'Ortenzio onto the circuit.
And presumably most drivers will be on a scrubbed set of tyres that they've used already in Q1 just to get a sighter lap in. I can't imagine anybody will be going for a mad dash sort of P1 setting lap time. And this will just be to get an insight as to how the track is evolving. Just maybe test a corner where you weren't up to speed or you're having trouble with. Maybe try a different line, try a different brake balance, something like that. And just get a sighter and make sure that that lap on the fresh set of tyres is the golden one. But with everybody following each other, that's not going to make it easy either in terms of performance if you've got a car right on the apex and you can't even see the curb. So I think some drivers just trying to put off their rivals as well a little bit. That's the psychological games that you have to play at this level. As there is Bernd Mailander.
Come on,
the
Bernd.
Legend.
We're cheering
the
for
man,
you,
the
Bernd.
myth, the legend.
Q2 going to be insane. I absolutely agree, Gibby. Welcome in, everybody. Otis Lawrence here once again. The legend that is, of course, Otis Lawrence, calling out Angelo D'Ortenzio for being an absolute nutter with some of the racing that he is going about. But it is Gabor Chonstos. Took a little bit of time to try and work out which driver was at the very front of the train. But it is the silver arrow of Chonstos, piling up the hill into the heavy braking zone of turn number 3. He tries to throw it in there. You can see just a little bit of tentative driving there as he tried to rotate it through turn number 3. Now barreling back down the straight into the tricky downhill braking zone of 4. Like you mentioned, we're going to see a lot of drivers on the used tyres you would expect. Soft tyres aren't quite as terrible in the 26 cars as they were in the 25 cars, and for the majority of the Grand Effect era on the F1 game. So there is an opportunity, especially around a short circuit like this, where we might not see too much of a drop-off from the first fine lap to the second.
Yes, in terms of compounds, they're no longer made of soft cheese, they're made of hard cheese. It changes a little bit, but at least they can get 2 laps in, and they can maybe do a very short stint in the race. So it's looking like a solid... Oh, well, I say that, and around he goes. Oh, no, on the curb, just locking the brakes and just trying to, I think, get the throttle down immediately afterwards and around on the battery. That is a very common thing to see in these cars. The deployment is horrendous sometimes in terms of the grip just goes away. You don't have time to recover the car, and that's how it goes. Very lucky to not go into the barrier there, because although they might be not on a full 100% push lap, if you go into the wall, that could be your qualifying session over anyway.
A lot of mistakes, a lot of invalidations. Chonstos trying the reverse entry drift into the final corner, unsuccessful. Bison with a slow one. Jensen Rosen goes fastest on a 3.7. Joris Krozen, one of the drivers to invalidate. Tamas Kekeni over track limits as well. Here's Elia Tomasetto, fallen foul of it. Conrad Bohm, I think, has done the same. And whether the Mercedes is out there pushing once again remains to be seen. But it's Rosen leading the way. Only 4 drivers in the 103s after a bit of a hectic first runs of the session. D'Ortenzio and Stevens, first and second in Q1, both of them bailing out of their first attempts, although Stevens may not have actually jumped out onto the circuit. D'Ortenzio definitely bailed out of their first lap time. Kekeni back in the pits as well. And Gabor Chonstos with some 50p pieces as his tyres after sliding it backwards through the final corner.
Yeah, quite a few drivers sliding and spinning through Sector 2 as well on their way back to the pits. That's an interesting one. Krozen will dart it into the pits. He was on a sort of push lap there, just trying to get the most. And you've got to play the time here as well. You've just got to take into account that some of the drivers are pushing flat out, and their outlaps will have been faster than usual, just for the fact that if they want to get a used a run on used tyres, I will get my words out eventually, they have just had to bring that gap down a little bit on the outlap, and so they will have overheated their tyres, hence the mistakes. And it's in the braking zones especially where the rear tyres just complain and lock up if you've got them slightly over temperature. And although the tyres are better in terms of wear and predictability, the soft tyres still overheat very, very quickly. So yeah, probably some mitigation for the mistakes, but On the fresh set of tyres, there's no more excuses as Bernd Maylander goes past once again.
Can we try and work out his time? He crossed the line with what? 9:58-ish remaining. It's going to be difficult to try and pick Bernd up once again, but we head out once more after a very small lull in proceedings. It is Luero out onto the circuit, first driver out there, representing Red Bull, of course, and third fastest after the first runs. One of only a few to get a real representative banker lap time. There is the flash of the red Mercedes safety car just heading through turn number 3. There's going to be Luero that attacks this circuit at full chat for the first time on what will probably be the brand new set of tyres. This is the one that's really going to count for drivers. If you can get your good lap time in now, it means that A, you can either retire come the end of the session, or if you're not entirely confident, you can head out again, but you've got that safety net of going got a pretty darn decent banker.
Yeah, indeed, and it just gives you options for Q3 as well, just in terms of confidence as well for Q3, if you can just get that one lap in. But I will say for the top 4, a 103.8 probably won't get you through to Q3, but it puts pressure on everyone else. A 3.7 is probably a time on the sort of on the crossover point between eliminations. So a lot of these drivers will just have a little bit more confidence for Alejandro starting the lap now. This is crunch time. This is where you'll see the very fast laps, as I don't see Bernd Maylander in the background, so we won't be able to calculate the time. Into turn 1, clouting curb, a very good exit over the, a little bit too much over the sausage curb on the exit, I'd say. So unfortunate there, but that will hurt his deployment all the way down this straight. So sector 1, not perfect, and finding less than a tenth on fresh tyres, so not ideal, but it's a good exit from the hairpin. A little bit of complaining for the rear, so solid so far. It should be enough to improve, but will it be enough to get him through to Q3?
Yeah, 103.8 wasn't a time that got you out of Q1, so if you think that that's going to get you into the ballpark to get into Q3, I think the drivers might be a little bit mistaken. I think only Jensen Rosen's time good enough to make it through that first part of qualifying with the hectic first runs that we saw, but Luero through the second sector split is bailed out of that one. Lost a little bit more time. With the Red Bull backing off, and we'll wait to see. There is Bernd Maylander distracting Jensen Rosen down into the braking zone of turn number 4, where it takes it nicely, using a lot of the exit curve on the right-hand side as we look at it. Provisionally fastest at the moment, with a hell of a lot of drivers looking to try and take chunks out of him. Steven Varzo lowers the benchmark by a couple of tenths, 103.5, fastest time that we've seen so far this evening for the Alpine man. As we wait for the rest of the times to come in thick and fast. Rosen, Gal, Luero and Engel. Second, third, fourth and fifth at the moment. Here comes Rosen. Can he try and take that first position back away from Varzo to the line? Yes, he does by 3 milliseconds. And Conrad Bohm steals it straight back.
Well, that's disappointing. You just cross the line and you think, oh, P1, and then you get demoted, and then Liam Stevens crossed the line as well to demote Jensen to P3. So all of the drivers managing to find a 3.5 lap time there. So, oh, huge snap there for Tamas Gal, and that will not be good for the last sector time here. Will it be enough, though, to get him in the ballpark? It's going to absolutely send it through the penultimate turn. A brilliant turn in as well. Last turn, oh, over, and that is an invalidation. So that lap will not count, and it would have been just a slight improvement anyway, but not enough at the moment. For Alejandro here, here's the second lap, and it's that was an invalidation as well. So drivers just pushing the limits a little bit too much, and that's probably a common theme as the drivers are having to find that extra tenth of a second. You just have to send it and carry the speed, probably with the battery almost down to 0. So that is that importance of the last turn. You have to carry the speed because you just can't deploy the battery like you could last year, and that is what drivers maybe are struggling with. By the way, based on the calculations of Bernd Maylander, I think it was about a 1:45 lap time.
Come on, Bernd, pull your finger out. Get a little bit of pace going, my friend. Tamas Kilkenny approaching the final couple of corners. Joris Krozen, whilst we were looking at that, going third fastest. Another member of the 103.5 club, back of the car sliding as he tries to throw it into the final corner. Kilkenny to the line, 14 flat. Slowest representative time that we've had so far. Gabor Chonstos making a bit of a mess of this still. Invalidated his previous attempt, invalidating again. But we head over to Angelo D'Ortenzio. Bernd just flashes in the foreground, heading into the penultimate corner. A bit of a rolling roadblock, perhaps, for the Ferrari as he muscles his way past and invalidates through the final corner. You hate to say it's probably a bit of distraction going on. Would have slotted into position 4. But D'Ortenzio now, with that little error, leaving yourself with a lot of work to do going into the final stages. Drivers under pressure here. Bottom 6 currently Tomasetto, Luero, Santana, Kokeni, Chonstos and Angelo D'Ortenzio, who, remember, coming into this on the back of back-to-back pole positions. But it's Liam Stevens, last week's winner, after a post-race penalty for D'Ortenzio, leading the way again in qualifying, with Bohm just 6 milliseconds further back.
Oh, invalidated that one as well, I think, on the penultimate turn, if it wasn't validated before. So he's just going for, I think, a little bit of a cruise and just testing for Q3. For D'Ortenzio, it's not too bad a situation, because if I remember correctly, he has an extra set of tyres compared to everyone else. He was sat in the pit lane for a long time. So it will be pressure. He'll only probably get 1 lap in on the extra set of tyres. But it's going to have to be a valid lap if he doesn't want to get eliminated. And what would that mean? 2 of the favourites, effectively, in terms of just form, in P16 and P17. Now, that would be interesting prospects for the race. I'm not saying that will happen. I'm hoping that Angelo can get a lap on the board. But if it doesn't, that means the pressure or the opportunity is for the other drivers.
Definitely means we could be in for an exciting one, as Luero back out on the circuit for Red Bull, giving themselves an opportunity maybe to perhaps go again if the first attempt goes awry. Needs to find a time. I was thinking heading into Q2, maybe you would be able to sneak through on a 103.6. Looking at the top 6, though, in the 5s, I'm thinking you definitely got to be in the 5s if you're going to be feeling confident here. And maybe even the drivers like Steven Varzo, Jensen Rose and Lucas Bison are definitely on a high 103.5. Probably not in a position where you can rest on your laurels. Liam Stevens bailing out of it, retiring, happy with his lap time. Conrad Bohm, you would expect, will do the same. Bohm with only a couple of points to his name in the championship, but looking very strong this week at Austria.
This reminds me a lot of what I saw in F1 22 with the change of regulations and the cars handling completely different. You saw that incremental gain of pace for about 6 months, where the drivers were just finding different strategies, just different driving styles to go faster and faster. And that 1/10 of a second difference in qualifying is really important, because it means that you have to just push that extra little bit. For Alejandro there, it's a good sector 1, just clouting curbs exactly how you want, just having that wheel up on the sausage. Oh, it's a rotation on the curb, however. That will cost him a little bit in terms of drive. He'll have to deploy maybe a little bit more battery. I think just applying a little bit too much brake burst to the rear to get the rotation. And I think he might have backed out of that one. He definitely has.
Really threw the car in, super aggressive with his inputs, but just over-calculating it and over-egging it just a little bit, where you can see there the back of the car complaining as he tried to get it through turn number 3 and getting the car to bite unsuccessfully on that occasion. Joris Kroes in the second to retire so far, 3rd fastest at the moment. Less than 120 seconds left in the second part of qualifying, as we wait for the drivers to proceed onto their final flying laps of the session. Crossing the line now is Tamas Gal, currently 9th fastest, very much on the bubble on a 3.7. For my money, you're definitely going to have to find probably 0.2 of a second on this lap.
Yeah, you're just going to have to go for it. No slipstream there from Bernd Mailander, thankfully. But if you want to come across him, that's exactly where you need to. And into the hairpin here. Lovely rotation there, just missing the curb there. That's exactly the line you want to take for maximum grip. The exit speed was incredible for Tamas on this lap. Going into the second sector, it's a really solid one. Just a little bit of rotation on the curb and a very wide, actually, going into the infield section here. So dropping a little bit of time. What is that sector time going to be? Very wide and a little bit over the gravel, and it is nearly improving by 0.2 of a second. This is what you need to do. This might put him toward the top of the leaderboard, but again, the penultimate 2 turns, these have been the break-it point for many laps here. Can he keep it within the lines? Can he maximize the speed? It's a little bit of a wobble, too much of the inside curb on the last turn, but it is enough. P7. He'll be kicking himself though, because he lost a 1/10 of a second in the last sector.
Back down to P8. Here comes Luero to the line. Up to P9. Slots in just behind Tamas Gal with the checkered flag now flying. Steven Varzo bailed out of that one. Checkered flag not flying yet. In fact, there's still 30 seconds. I got ahead of myself as Varzo waits to go once again. Angelo D'Ortenzio in the middle sector at the moment. We need to look at last week's pole sitter. Back-to-back pole sitter. Lucas Bison into the pits. Will be under pressure on that 103.594. D'Ortenzio needs to get this lap time in. Final couple of corners to negotiate. negotiate. Jensen Rosen done in P4 as well. Slight wobble for Dortenzio through the penultimate corner up to P10. Whoa, hold on a moment. Angelo Dortenzio massively under the cosh here. Who is there that can stop him? It's Elia Tomasetto heading through the final corner, not improving at the moment, needs to find a bit of time. 13th becomes 12th. Dortenzio still sweating bullets. Santana improving by a big chunk. Doesn't knock out Dortenzio, only 11th fastest. We'll wait for Engel and we'll wait for Gabor Chonstos as well.
Okay, this is crunch time. Let's see the second sector time here. It needs to be negative on the delta, and it is. It is negative on the delta, but is it by enough? I don't think it well, Sontov made the mistake in the last sector, to be fair, so that could well be enough. We can't really say it's a representative sort of gap here. So across and to the finish line now, just maximizing the curb. This might be enough. But it isn't. Can you believe it? By a 10th of a second, it's not going to be enough. Simon Engel does do enough, and that is Dortenzio out of the second qualifying session. Can you believe it?
Dortenzio was clinging on for dear life. Largo drops it through the penultimate corner, but right at the last gasp, Angelo Dortenzio bumped out by, I've forgotten who it was, Simon Engel to the line on that 103.6. Dortenzio will be cursing the existence of Bernd Mailander. I think that might have been what cost him a chance to get into the final part of qualifying. Slower than his Q1 lap time, I believe, or at least matching his Q1 lap time. And that is another big shock. Second in the championship, out in Q1. Fourth in the championship. And the back-to-back pole sitter out in Q2.
I didn't have that on my bingo cards, and I think just drivers struggling with the regen. You mentioned it so many times, Tom, that they're having to lift and coast a little bit to regen battery, but that means into the corner, demanding a lot of the rear tyres. That braking, engine braking, has to come from somewhere, and so they're stamping on the brakes into the hairpins, and the car's just rotating like a handbrake on the rear. They're not used to it, or they will be used to it. Obviously, they drive a lot in this game, but it catches them out.
So, big shock once again. Angelo Dortenzio, 11th fastest only, joined by Tamas Kikeni, Alex Santana, Gabor Chonstos, Elia Tomasetto, and Francesco Largo making way in the second part of qualifying. That leaves this 10 to progress through. Alejandro Luero squeaking in by 0.03 of a second. I say squeaking in, that's a fairly sizable margin considering what we've seen so far, but the top three in that session with a late lap from Steven Varzo separated by just 7 milliseconds and just 1/1000th of a second separating the top two. An opportunity for somebody here to try and steal a march.
And I think it's interesting to note that a lot of the drivers that did well in Q2 got a representative lap in early. The drivers that didn't struggled, and that's where you see just drivers trying some experimental stuff, maybe going outside of their comfort zone, whereas some drivers are just getting on with it, setting a good lap time, and the pressure is on some of the other drivers. Q3, however, chance to get your pole position, everyone's going to send it. Bernd Mailander is sending it once again. That makes me smile every single time. Hopefully he does some drifts out there for the crowd.
He probably was there in Q1 and we just weren't able to pick him up. But yes, and Simon Engel from Tattle here getting some love. Only got about 1 hour on this game and he's managed to knock out the man that's got back-to-back pole positions. Quite the shock, isn't it? But that's what you can see around a circuit like this when the margins are so tight. You are under pressure to try and get that ultimate lap time in. If you do make just the smallest of errors, you leave yourself compromised and you're starting what? Probably, some would say 10 places further back than he would have expected Dortenzio.
Must admit, it was looking like he was favourite for pole, but once again, when you've only got a 10th of a second margin for getting eliminated in Q2 or getting pole position, that's some high pressure. For context, that's a lockup. Just one little lockup, that's a 10th of a second, that's your qualifying lap out and done. That's why we're seeing so many drivers abort their laps and go again, because they know it's not good enough. They know they have to preserve the tyres for that second lap. They have to regenerate the battery. That's one of the problems as well. You can't just go and do another qualifying lap because you're starting with half a battery in the tank and you will run out halfway through the lap. So it's a really interesting predicament. And these cars almost punish you even more for a mistake in qualifying than they did with last year's cars. So it's a game of risk and the stakes are so high, higher than possibly ever before in qualifying.
Absolutely. But for the first time in Q3, we can go maximum attack with Joris Krozen the first after overtaking Liam Stevens on the outlap. Throws it into turn number 1. We jump on board with the driver that I think is piloting the Haas car, but obviously not in the multiplayer at the moment. Barreling up the hill into turn number 3. 50.8 is competitive into the first sector split. Cranks on the steering lock, lights up the rear tyres lively with a loud pedal, coming out of a traction zone of 3, and back down the hill we go into turn number 4. Tricky braking zone, using the curb, the entry curb on the outside, little bit of a slide at the midpoint of the apex, little bit of a wobble as well over the exit curb on the left as you fly into the middle sector. The middle sector sweeps.
Just a little bit of a lift there. You could see it on the dash, just the battery, but maybe able to recover 10% of the battery, and you'll need that for the dart to the line. So you'll be deploying all the way down here, maybe a little bit of a lift into the penultimate corner, all the way over the curb so you can carry the speed. It's so important to carry that apex speed, but it's carried too much. Invalidated just, I think, on the exit of the penultimate turn. So it will be Liam Stevens setting the benchmark. What would it be?
Wow.
A 1:03.4. The lap times come down even more, and I don't even know if that was on a scrubbed set of tyres. If that is one statement of intent.
Serious wheels for Liam Stevens there. Fastest time we've seen so far. And we'll wait to see if anybody can chase him down. Julian Klaffenborg, 16.5 to the first sector. Not particularly speedy. I think he may have invalidated, similar to Joris Krozen, on their first attempt. So we jump back to Simon Engel, the man that ended Angelo Tortenzio's pole position hope slightly earlier. 15.9, a little bit off the pace in sector 1, but with the way that this circuit works, the way the battery will work, it can be a little bit split. Some drivers will choose to use their battery on the run into turn 3, and some will use to burn it coming out of turn 3.
Yeah, obviously that sector point is just before the hairpin as well, so some drivers will, as you say, lift a little bit earlier, and that affects their time. We'll have to see in sector 2 here, so drum roll, let's see into the sector 2. Will it be an improvement? I think that's just around the ballpark of Liam Stevens' sectors, to be fair, so we'll have to wait for the full lap time, but it's looking like a solid lap. It's looking like a committed lap, a little bit less aggressive over the curb as well, and that's an invalidation. Again, just the bouncing over that curb in the penultimate into the entry of the penultimate corner, and it costs you everything, and a little wiggle of the steering wheel is quite annoyed with that one. Can Steven Vazo do anything? As we have Conrad Bohm setting a lap time, a 3.4 as well, so just another one. Jensen Rosen as well, so the top 3, a 1:03.4 at the moment. You are going to have to put in a mesmerizing lap to compete with them. I have no idea how that wasn't an invalidation from Vazo there across the line, and it is a 3.7. I have to say that might not be good enough, but then again, it may have been a set of tyres that has been used multiple times.
The top 3 covered by 0.03 of a second. Stephen Vars with further 0.3 back. Luera competitive through sector 1 and sector 2. 44.3 is around the kind of place you want to find yourself with these final 2 corners left to negotiate. Liam Stevens provisionally on pole position for the time being. Bowman Rosen very closely contested just behind. Bit of a slide for Luero through the final corner. Chases down to the line. It's P4. 1:03.5 for the Red Bull. Beissner out of the final corner, looking pretty tidy through the first couple of sectors. Hold your horses, because the prancing horse is up to provisional pole by a couple of hundredths. Beissner takes over from Liam Stevens.
That is an incredible lap, and just to improve by a couple of hundredths of a second is so difficult. So it's going to be difficult to beat that time if you're setting a perfect time, because all of these drivers are within a couple of hundredths of a second. So unless you find something different, it's going to be difficult. Tamascal setting a very good sector 1 time there. I think that was a 15. Hang on, no, that's not a good sector 1 time, is it? Actually, that's a couple of tenths shy. So maybe just using the battery a little bit more conservatively. It's a very talented driver in terms of management. Obviously, got a lot of experience through various forays and various competitions. So he will be a calm head on his shoulders in this Q3. Sector 2 is a good sector 2. So as we cross Mindlander here, he won't be impeded, I don't think. There you go. There will be no visibility problems into the penultimate corner. It's a good rotation, clouting curb, and no invalidation. Last turn to go. A little bit of a sliding. God knows how that wasn't invalidation. That must have been a millimetre to spare, but it's only a 3.8. So that first sector just wasn't fast enough.
Yeah, it was about a tenth down in all 3 sectors. culminating in that margin of 3.5 tenths between themselves and the provisional pole sitter Beisner. We expected a Ferrari to be on pole, but this is not necessarily the one that we thought it might have been. Joris Krozen on maybe a cool-down lap or something, because he's a couple of seconds off the pace. So we will jump back on board with Julian Klaffenbach just behind his teammate, the two Haas cars, approaching the final couple of corners. Will this be Klaffenbach going for it or returning to the pits? Hard to tell at this stage, but I think is carrying on. No, does jump into the pits. Liam Stevens out there invalidated again. Not necessarily sure what the plan is for Liam up to the line, and sets an invalidated time that is identical to the provisional pole time of Lucas Beisner. Not sure if Liam had invalidated before the final corner. Definitely was way wide heading through it. Definitely got a little bit more time in the back pocket has the Aston Martin. Top 4 covered by just half a tenth.
I think that was another invalidation in the penultimate corner just on the exit of it. So that penultimate corner just not having the grip that everyone is expecting, and possibly just a different... it can be paradoxical, because if you have more grip from Q2 going into Q3, then you rotate the car and all of a sudden the car's in a different place on the track and you can hit a bump or have something go wrong. So for a driver like Krozen here, who needs to set a time right now, it's looking like a good lap. Battery running out there, you can see it just down to the last 2 or 3%. And this is the penultimate turn, very, very bumpy. Over the curbs, you have to use them to their best of their ability. To the line, will it be enough? And it will get him only to P8.
Invalidated.
Was that another improvement? It was invalidated. I didn't see that. My apologies. The one time that I wasn't looking at the track map through the last turn, and of course that happens. Unfortunate, because it was actually a really good time.
The Krozen caught out again with the invalidation. 8th fastest at the moment on that 7.3, the cool-down lap in between the two hot laps. Beisner, Stevens, Bone, Rose and Luero, the top 5 as things stand. Joris Krozen, the only former pole sitter so far. We've had 2 so far this season. Joris Krozen in Australia. And then back-to-back, Angelo D'Ortenzio in China and Silverstone. Will it be somebody new? And can Joris Krozen try and find that lick of pace to get himself into contention? 3 minutes to go. Krozen a little bit out of sync with everybody else. But here is Luero rounding the final corner to start what could be their final flying lap, but it remains to be seen. The Red Bull up the hill into turn number 1 once again, with all the drivers using all of the road on the run into turn 1. Throw it over the curb on the inside and really V that corner off and blast it up the hill into turn number 3. Have we found a decent chunk of time? No, he has backed off. Yes, 1.1 seconds down. But that is Luero either going for a warm-up lap to get the tyres into contention, getting them into the right window, or with a mistake, maybe not happy with his run.
Yeah, I think, Tom, sorry to interrupt you there. I think it was just clouting the sausage curb on the exit of turn 1. It was way too aggressive and he didn't get the exit speed effectively. I think Stephen Vazzo has done the same thing. Yeah, he's backed off as well. Just too much over the sausage curb on the exit. And the problem is, all the way down the straight, you'll lose 0.2 of a second. It's not worth it. You have just about enough time to get back for another lap, so it's better to abort the lap, save the tyres, save the battery, and try and go again. Smart driving, to be fair, but it's just the pressure on these drivers. You're going to see quite a lot of drivers just falter. And I will say, for anybody maybe from P8 downwards, if you can just get a valid time in the ballpark, you could move up to P5 or P6. So sometimes playing it smart, just setting a valid lap time is enough.
Joris Krozen heading out with just under 90 seconds left on the clock. Boom through turn 1. This time, third time of asking for the final runs. Gets it right, unlike Luero and unlike Vazzo. Less than half a tenth separating himself and pole position, and finds a 10th through the first sector. Only 2 points so far this season for Conrad Bohm, scored for the first time in Silverstone at the British Grand Prix a week ago. And he tried and had a few more points to his tally. Looking really hooked up here at Spielberg. Down into turn number 4. Maybe a little bit tentative with the turning point. Didn't throw the car and didn't see the wheel flicking through 4 that we've seen from a couple of other drivers. Into the middle sector now, though, to complete it through turn 6, 7, 8 as well. And up by nearly a tenth and a half. This should be a big improvement for Conrad Bohm. Piloting the Silver Arrows. Got to be careful of the safety car, the Mercedes safety car, that might just off-put him into the penultimate corner. Throw the car in. Bohm does a very good job to carry the speed. Just the last corner left. Playing with fire again on the track limits. This should be lowering the benchmark by a considerable distance, and does.
Wow. You have to say everything was thrown against him on that lap as Alejandro goes P2 as well. A 103.4. Just not managing to get into the 0.3s, but that may be enough to get a front row position. Klaffenbach to P5, setting a valid time there at 3.47 there. So just in the latter stages of the 0.4s, as we've got a lot of drivers completing their laps now. Vaso, can he get more than P7 at the moment? Across the line, is a valid lap time. No, it wasn't an improvement, sadly. Stevens is not on a flower lap, and he won't get another lap in. He's just a few seconds too late, and clouting the barrier into the pit lane. That was nearly a disaster there. Who is on a lap? Lucas is not on a lap. Klaffenbach's not on a lap. Jensen's not on a lap. Vaso's not on a lap. Thomas Gal is probably on a lap. I hope for his sake. Krozen should be on a lap as well. This is chaos towards the end of quali.
Rosen in a good spot. The driver's falling by the wayside. Stevens couldn't improve. Beisner couldn't improve. Klaffenbach to 5th. No improvements either for Rosen or Vaso, leaving the door open either to Conrad Bohm or somebody else. Will it be Joris Krozen to pick up a second pole position of the season? Rounds the final corner. The Haas to the line. Joris Krozen goes 4th fastest. Jumps just ahead of Liam Stevens. We wait to see if anybody else is still pushing. Beisner on a hot lap still in the Ferrari. Klaffenbach done in P6. Can Beisner get back onto pole? Held it after the first run, sliding through the final corner. Up to the line we go with Lucas Beisner, and it's still only P3. Finds a little bit of time, and up
1,000.
to second. That is Jensen Rosen who takes it away from Luero, but it remains to be Conrad Bohm. Simon Engel didn't get a lap time in at the end. Conrad Bohm, only driver into the 3.3s, with a late lap from Jensen Rosen to jump up ahead of Luero. Beisner and Krozen completing your top 5.
How frustrating for Beisner, improving by 1,000th of a second on your last lap. But for Conrad Bohm, that is a state of intent and just managing to maximize not only the first laps, but just basically every lap of that Q3. It was an improvement. It was just a solid pace. It was solid consistency. And that puts you in a very good position going into the race. Sadly for him, the points aren't earned in qualifying, they're earned during the race, so he'll be just hoping to just get out in front, cruise off into the distance. It's not going to happen that way, I can pretty much guarantee it, but that's what the objective is when you're on pole.
Breaking that 1 second gap, trying to break up that train is going to be of paramount importance. Hopefully we're not just left with a black screen, because we'd like to show you the final qualifying results, but I'm not holding out too much hope here as we wait. As the game
not
tells
looking
us
optimistic, is it?
Not looking ideal.
Please hold. The 1990s microprocessor is working hard here to get the server result.
Come on, somebody feed the mouse on the wheel.
Loading.
I think we might have just been kicked out. So
unfortunate situations.
Well, that was a rather abrupt end to our qualifying session. But very impressive qualifying there. Really exciting session. And a lot of shocks, which I think is exactly what we like to see, because it means that this qualifying session and the race that's coming up, unpredictability. And that's what we like about motorsport, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And with so many great drivers starting toward the back of the grid, it's going to be a case of how quick can you get through the grid? Do you have better race pace than quali pace? And who can master the strategy? Because undercuts, overcuts around this track are very important and can break that train up. And that is what you want to do as a driver. So we're in for an interesting race, and we're in for a race that probably won't be won on the first lap, but it can most definitely be lost on the first lap.
Very much. A lot up for grabs here. That turn 1 is a bit of a pinch point, isn't it? We've got to be careful of that one. Still, we've got Jona Martins in. Welcome in, Jona. Supporting Angelo D'Ortenzio for that victory. Starting from P11, out of position, getting knocked out in Q2. That'll be interesting to see what he can do. Tycho Harley knocked out in Q1, down in 17th. Another driver with it all to do. But we're expecting a little bit of chaos, aren't we? And we can be sure that around a circuit like this, it probably will come. But we are going to have a little bit of an interlude before we get into the 36-lap race that lies await in front of us. So we'll be back very, very shortly. welcome back, everybody, as the music starts playing on Shantae, as we will very shortly be heading into our 36th lap race. Bit of a mixed up grid. On Bowman on pole position, excellent performance from himself. Two big championship contenders a little bit down the order. Should make for a very exciting Austrian Grand Prix, but I'm going to try and show you what I failed to do earlier on in the stream, right at the very start, and that is go through the calendar. Yes, there it is, calendar appearing for us. We're at round 4, of course, for the Red Bull Ring, the Austrian Grand Prix. Started in Australia, then headed to China and Great Britain. No race in a week's time. First of 2 break weeks. Then we go through Suzuka. I keep wanting to say every other circuit begins with S apart from Suzuka. Suzuka Spa, Sakir, another one, and the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. Then comes our second break week. We will reconvene on the 22nd of September. That feels a long time away, even though it's only about 6 weeks, I think. But a final 4 race run that looks absolutely wild. Saudi Arabia, I'm yet to see a race around Saudi Arabia in the 26 cars. I've driven a couple and they've been interesting, put it that way. Mexico City, really long main straight. That's going to be carnage. Brazil, we all love a bit of Brazil. And then Abu Dhabi to round out the season. John, when you look at that calendar, obviously we've had a couple of races so far. We've got Austria 50% done. What kind of circuits are you looking at and thinking we could be in for a fun one there?
Yeah, well, I watched round 3. That was a fun race as well. So the Silverstone with the battery is very, very tricky. I think obviously Japan will be one of those where you're looking at it and thinking, oh, that's going to be overtake fest with the battery. Looking at circuits like Jeddah, it's so easy to get it wrong when overtaking people now with just the difference of speed. And with the Mexico, Brazil and Abu Dhabi sort of finale that we have to the season, that's where you have the high-risk maneuvers to gain places and where it could go wrong as well. So it's kind of like a crescendo up to the finish line, this season's calendar. And I think the drivers will be a little bit apprehensive going into the final races, which makes races like this also important to get points on the boards to give yourself a little bit of a cushion. So will we see that into effect? I think it's a little bit too early into the season for that. But drivers are smart. They start thinking very early.
And if you can bank those points early on, set yourself up really nicely, especially when the championship still at this stage is very congested. We don't necessarily know who all the runners and riders are going to be. We've got a couple of ideas, but some of those drivers, Tycho Hardy has been so consistent so far in the first 3 races, but had a little bit of an off day last week, and this week's come in, qualified badly, try and pick yourself up after that one. Anzo D'Ortenzio probably unlucky to miss out on Q3 as well. Was briefly the championship leader before that post-race penalty handed the win to Liam Stevens and the championship lead to Joris Krozen, who's in a decent position on the grid, as well as Stevens. But sets us up really nicely, as I keep saying. Really looking forward to this, because Austria is a circuit that you mentioned it earlier, I absolutely love. Not because it's overly challenging, just because there's so much at stake, and there's the opportunity for drivers to maybe get a little bit creative with some of their moves, especially in the early phases when we've got this battery race.
Yeah, there's a lot more opportunities now with the little bit of lifting and coasting, paradoxically, where you can get a switch back on the driver. You can go a little bit later in terms of braking into the corner, try and force them to have a bit of understeer or cut the curb on the inside. I'm talking especially going through Sector 2, for example. So there's a lot of opportunities where you can just put the other drivers in a little bit of difficulty, and we've seen how that impacts the battery as well. If you're not doing the regen, if you're fighting for position, that can easily throw you out of sorts. And so it's all about sort of that strategy game, possibly from probably the first 3 or 5 laps, where you want to stay in the train, you want to sort of jockey for position, but if you lose one position, it's a lot better than falling out of that 1 second gap.
And we've seen that battery racing and lose you a lot of time when it is that roundabout effect where you burn your ERS, then somebody else burns it to defender attack, somebody else gets involved. Because it's so clustered together, you can just leak seconds over the period of 3 or 4 laps to a group in front of you. That's what allows those breaks in the train to form. Obviously, some of them are down to a lack of pace, which we could call a skill issue, but I'm not going to at this stage. But yeah, that's going to be...
Maybe not.
We'll hold off on that one, see if there are any actual skill issues throughout the race, but... yeah.
If you're talking my pace, yes, you can call it a skill issue.
My
most
pace
definitely.
as well. I think I'm probably one of the most washed up sim racers in history. Not that I was particularly good beforehand anyway. But what I will do very quickly, we're about to load in, so I'm gonna show you the standings once again. Hopefully this works. I'll even double check to make sure that it works. The right thing? I don't think it is the right thing. Bring it back in. Is that going to be working?
There we go.
Standings. There we go.
Yay.
Just bear with us, everybody. But it is Joris Krozen leading the way on 56 points. 3 ahead of Tycho Hardy, down in P17. Angelo D'Ortenzio level pegging with Liam Stevens. D'Ortenzio down in P11. Luca Rapassa not here. Opportunity for somebody further back to bring themselves into the fray. It won't be Luca Rapassa, who isn't here. Won't be Sergio Sabrina, who still won that first race in Australia a couple of weeks ago and has checked out ever since. We haven't seen the Racing Bull drivers since then. Lucas Beisner in a good position. Jensen Rosen as well in P11. Had a really good race a week ago in Silverstone. You're looking to try and pick up some more points to maybe catapult himself into contention. Tamas Kokeni just nestled inside the top 10 as well. But I believe we are getting fairly close to race start, which excites me much.
Oh yeah, and especially with the starts here with the battery, if you get wheel spin, you might be losing a huge amount of positions. There we go. That's the image we like to see. The pit lane getting ready. You can see the cars there off to the right. And this is where the apprehension starts, and also the strategies. Whatever tyre you start on can have a huge difference here, and also because it's a quite long run uphill down into turn, or up into turn 1, I should say. A lot of things can go wrong.
Absolutely. Hills, you can just see in the background. Back in the F1 26 car, should mention as well, weather is set to dynamic. I think we're back on dynamic because that little issue where some people get hot lap mode and some people wouldn't has been eradicated. But safety cars are turned off because they are, for some reason, completely broken on the F1 game, as they have been for a little while. Same with red flags, which are also obviously off for the same reason. So, but Mylander, as much as he wanted to come out in qualifying, he won't be making an appearance in the race unless something absolutely wild happens. And Danny, I see you in the chat. You're moving a little bit mad there, trying to twist some words to cause something else out. But yes, looking forward to this one. Battery management going to be absolutely key, and that run into turn 1 and then up the hill into 3 as well. It's that the old adage. It's a bit of a cliche, but you can't win the race in those first couple of corners, but you can absolutely lose it, especially when you haven't got that safety net of a safety car.
Yeah, I'm too used to Rallycross where they back it in sideways into turn 1. So let's hope that there's no Rallycross maneuvers. Let's hope that that stuff didn't happen like it did in qualifying with that rotation, especially into the hairpin at the end of sector 1, because that's a very heavy braking zone. And if you're trying to gain position, especially with that high race fuel at the start, everything can go wrong. I'd expect a lot of drivers to probably be starting on the softs or mediums. You want to keep track position around here just for the sake of making it easier for you, but we'll have to wait and see as here we go.
Timed it to perfection. The hills are alive with the sound of horsepower, everybody, as we are racing for the Austrian Grand Prix. Conrad Bohm on the right of our picture, Jensen Rosen on the left, the Williams maybe with a better start. It's actually Luero putting both of them under a little bit of pressure as Krozen and Beisner go side by side just in the back of shot. Still leading the way is Bohm. Car backwards potentially right at the rear of the field, though everybody's still going on about their business. Bohm to the right hand side on our picture. Little look to the inside for Luero. It's actually Beisner charging around the outside. Liam Stevens trying to get stuck in with the 2 Haas cars. Also Stephen Varza making up places. Good start as well for Angelo D'Ortenzio. Only 11th on the grid, but tried to move up inside the top 8. Side by side, a picture just in front. Luero on the defensive. Krozen on the defensive as well. Stevens given the cold shoulder by the lead Haas car. Now he falls into the clutches of Klaffenborg, who's all over the back of the green machine. Contact. Stevens into the back of Krozen. Klaffenborg has to go the long way round through turn number 6. Does he make it work into 7? You bet he makes it work. Still with a nose to the inside is the Aston Martin. Excellent move though from Klaffenborg.
I think Angelo D'Ortenzio has damage. I maybe saw a little bit of damage there to the right side of the wing. There you go. Yes, he has, and that is disastrous right at the start of the race. You're going to have to carry that through, and the best case scenario now is maintaining position as we go through the to start lap 2. As Conrad Bohm just clearing off a little bit, 0.7 of a second. But for the Ferrari driver here on screen, that is going to be a difficult situation. I was going to commentate on how he'd gotten a great race start, but it was at the cost of the front wing, and that's Stephen Fazio having a go as well. Will he be able to get it around the outside? Not quite, but just almost getting pushed onto the curb actually, and that will give Simon Engel a chance, but he's deploying battery. Yes, smart move from Stephen there, just deploying to keep position, and that's what you will see in this race, a game of brinksmanship until someone runs out the battery, as in the background was that Tamas Gal having a bit of a go in terms of move, just pushing drivers out of the way here as they all jockey for position. But at the moment it's been quite a clean and calm race start.
Tycho Hardy up a couple of places. 2 drivers opting for the alternate strategy, starting on the hards, going to the mediums with the Audis. Trade blows for the lowly positions of 17th and 18th. Victor Vidler through on Tomasetti with Cattina, then Fabrizio Donoso just behind them as Francesco Largo once hit around the outside of the penultimate corner. A brave man to try that, especially on Donoso.
Oh.
And there is contact, both of them off into the pickets. The Alpine into the wall. You would expect the Red Bull as well. That is two drivers tripping over each other in the very early stages, and with no safety car, that's going to be difficult to try and get those places back. And the alternate strategy Donoso was planning on going for, just thrown out of the window. As D'Ortenzio, not hampered by that front wing damage, to the inside of turn number 3, looking to put one over on one of his potential championship rivals side by side between the Ferrari and the Aston Martin. It'll be Stevens on the optimal line, potentially into turn 4, trying to hang it around the outside, but might get the cold shoulder, especially with a bit of understeer for Ferrari into the braking zone. D'Ortenzio is through, definitely not being hampered by that little bit of bodywork damage, as that's a Haas to the inside. Very aggressive move. Joris Krozen throws it down the inside with little abandon for the pursuit of P4. And it's Lucas Bison that has to drop down into position number 5. Krozen punchy, but making it work.
Day late and $1 short, but Joris Krozen has a lot of dollars apparently, and he made that one stick. Incredible move. Just caught everyone by surprise, including the commentators. And I tell you what, for everybody ahead of P7, I'd have a very long face at the moment, because Angelo D'Ortenzio is just keeping everyone honest, even with that damage. Just want to comment on Fabrizio Donoso. No wing damage that I could see, so he set the fastest lap of the race. He might have a chance to get back into this one, but for Francesco, there was a severe wing damage there, and that is probably his race done unless something bad happens. And that is the battle. Lucas Bessner just getting pushed out wide. Julian Klaffenbach trying to get to the inside, has got to the inside, is going to be last of the late breakers down into the downhill hairpin here. Who's going to get it? Klaffenbach still with the inside line and just able to push that Ferrari out onto the curb. Should be Klaffenbach's to keep, and it certainly is as he slots into P5. So the Haas's having a great start to this race.
On the move, in the groove, the two Haas cars dispossessing Beisner of P4 and P5. As we continue to see what will progress. Conrad Bone comfortable, still out in front. As Jensen Rosen just hovering at 0.6 of a second off the back of the Silver Arrow. With Luero comfortable as well in position number 3, and D'Ortenzio menacing, like you said, still in a good position despite the front wing damage that he is sporting. Slightly wide for Rossi coming out of turn 1. Maybe he'll be on the defensive with Luero fairly close behind. Hot footing it after the Williams up the hill into the second braking zone of the lap. Into the pits comes Tomasetto and Marcel Papp to switch onto a set of the hard compound tyres. Varza down the inside of Stevens, who's not had a particularly good start to this race. Does hold on to 8th place, albeit for the time being, but Varza looking punchy. Must have been the drive that made contact with D'Ortenzio on the opening lap. Stevens has to get his elbows out, throws the defensive shape down the hill into turn number 4, and does not give Varza the time of day on the outside. And now the Alpine from attack to defence, perhaps because the lead RB of Simon Engel tucked right up underneath the rear wing of the pink and blue car.
Well, that was a case of getting a bloodied nose in that hairpin for the Alpine driver, just getting the door slammed in his face, effectively. Liam Stevens saying, you are no way going around the outside of me, and you're going to have to try and get a little bit more battery deployed to get at least alongside. That's the thing, you have to be aggressive, especially with the lifting and coasting. You cannot afford to let a driver get alongside you, because that's when you lose time, as you said previously, Tom. So a lot of just on-track sort of negotiating going on effectively, as Santos is getting a move on as well. P13 at the moment, but Tamas Gal has some work to do as well. 7/10 behind, and I will say probably the hard tyres still a little bit slower, but he's still in that train, and that's all that matters for the moment. Meanwhile, the Ferraris deciding who shall be the number 1 driver, a little bit like in real life, just hampering a little bit each other, as they could get a move on Klaffenbach if they're working Zeren in the background as well. That was a huge move that nearly came on, but they're fighting so hard, and I tell you what, that gap is increasing. 7/10 of a second. They need to be careful here to not lose that train. The Ferraris are really in the danger zone.
Scarlet Civil War there down into turn 4. D'Ortenzio intent on trying to barrel his way past his teammate Beisner, but Beisner having none of it. Had to be careful because D'Ortenzio was steamrolling down the inside with a little bit of front wing damage as well. Little bit of contact as they came out of turn 4 through 5. And we're still as we were for the 2 Maranello-based cars. Quintino into the pits for Aston Martin towards the back of the pack. That's Engel having to go defensive with Tamas Kokeni up on his haunches. Tycho Hardy still down in P14. Tamas Gal, like you mentioned, doing a good job on those hard compound tyres, very much staying in the fray with this lead group of cars. It's a train of 17 drivers as they make their way up the hill for the 7th time into turn number 3. Still Bohm untroubled out in front, but the Ferraris definitely look like they're going to be going into combat once again.
In the background, Hardy getting absolutely hounded by Santana, the McLaren driver, and still in the background there, they're still fighting. But I think Santana's just got a little bit out of position there, deploying too much battery, and that means Alves is all the way through in the Williams. Just not enough there, and oh, to the inside as well. Victor Vidler just trying to get up, but hasn't managed to make the move stick. So it just emphasizes how you have to have your head in the game. You have to have your eye on the prize, because even just a millisecond of a miscalculation, and this is what happens. And I think we'll see the Audi driver just looking for a hint of a move here. But looking at that gap there, Tycho Hardy just not demonstrating the pace today. Hasn't really made a move forwards. Gained a few position from incident of people, but not making the moves that like we've seen from D'Ortenzio to move up those positions. So an interesting ebb and flow of pace this season as it carries on throughout this race. But now we're settling into that strategy. This is the part of the race where you have to save tyres a little bit. You have to open up the potential for the race, as Tamas Gal having to defend a little bit. Santos has the traction out of turn 1 to really put some pressure on the Cadillac driver, but at the moment Tamas Gal has the experience to just say there's no room at the inn here in P12.
Doing a good job still on those hard tyres, which should be getting into a position where they're at least level with the mediums. Just further back, that Santana under the cosh again. Vidler to the inside of turn number 6. The McLaren on the outside dances round and keeps hold of P16 for the time being. Vidler trying to pull off the move we saw from Crozen a few laps ago, sliding it down the inside, catching them unawares as he did to Beisner to take 4th position at the time. Beisner then losing out to Klaffenburg a lap later, but Rosen may be under a little bit of pressure further forward as well. The definition of nose to tail into turn 1, the Williams, the Red Bull of Luero, and Crozen just behind as well, carrying speed through turn 1, is the 2nd place man of Rosen, just 3/10 off the back of Conrad Bohm. Does need to be careful here, because Luero looking punchy perhaps into the braking zone, happy to sit behind, could be his downfall as Crozen spots a gap to slide it alongside the Red Bull racing car. Is it going to be rampant? No, the Haas has to just bide his time for a little bit longer, maybe just for one braking zone, as that's the worst camera angle we could have possibly had. Defensive shape thrown, just hovering in the middle of the road as Crozen tried to force the issue around the outside of 4, and still desperately trying, almost pushing, saying come on, get on with it mate, as we come out through 5 but into 6. Status quo is retained. Roasted from Luero from Crozen, with Klaffenbach just behind.
That's the funny scenario with these cars, is you're trying to save battery while getting attacked as well, and you've kind of got to walk that tightrope of not getting overtaken but setting yourself up for a move. And you can see Alejandro getting pounded here. Joris Crozen wanting to get a move on, wanting to say, hey, I have more pace here, I want to get past, maybe you'll get a move as well. And look at Conrad as well, 7/10 of a second. That gap is increasing, and I tell you what, that overtake mode is so important. Look at the gap that Fabrizio Donoso had, and well, it was 5 seconds, so they've had a little bit of a coming together, as that is a terrible exit for Crozen, just a little bit wide there over the curb. And I tell you what, Jensen Rosen is under pressure as well, as around the outside goes Alejandro, and he won't have the punted onto the curb there. That was never going to work, and it's still status quo here, but Crozen has lost a lot of time. Fabrizio Donoso has lost about 2 seconds since that mistake, just through not having the overtake mode, as we have Tycho Hardy again being attacked by 2 drivers simultaneously. Nelson and Santos just saying, hey, I want to have a good move at this one. No, after you, sir. But at the end of the day, just fighting like that gets nothing done, and so Hardy can just sit back and say, not today, lads.
Oh, that's a late move though into turn 7. That's a bit of a shoulder barge from Alves trying to come through. Chonstos lost out to Hardy into turn 3. Does keep hold of 14. I think Alves realising that was a little bit over the limit and handing that one back to the Mercedes. Could have tried to plummet his way through, but happy to sit in P15 and just, give up on that, because I think that was just a little bit too much there from Alves, but matters not as we continue on our way. Start of lap number 11 with Conrad Bohm having led every lap so far. Every corner the Mercedes has remained out in front with a 3-pointed start. Then it is Rosen under pressure. Now there's a late move from Luero to the inside of turn 3. Didn't work around the outside on the previous lap. Can he make it work to the inside? Rosen with the better exit out of 3. Still able to just keep the Red Bull at bay. Again, we don't want that onboard camera for the driver that's under pressure. Luero not close enough to make about a move, to think about a move and make an impression into turn 4. The two Haas cars still watching. Line astern just behind. That is Tomasetto retiring in the pits. We are down to 20, everybody. Just at third race distance. Top 5 still continuing to barrel around. Then we have the two Ferraris. D'Ortenzio, you have to say, doing a really good job with that handicap that he's holding. Missing his entire right-hand front wing end plate. Almost pushing his teammate Beisner into the penultimate corner. And he's going to peel off into the pit. So this is D'Ortenzio going for a bit of an alternate strategy here. Will he get his wing fixed? I'm not 100% sure as he's all locked up into the pit lane. This is going to be important. Does D'Ortenzio take the penalty of getting his wing fixed and losing about 5 seconds? I think he is. But D'Ortenzio's going to lose a bit of track position, you would expect here. Can he counterbalance it with the undercut?
Well, I think just Ferrari doing classic real-life Ferrari as we're about to lose the front wing on there. So just rest assured, the car is intact. There is a wing on the front of that car. But this is, I think, an intelligent strategy just in terms of, as we might have Joris Krozen going for an overtake here. No, not. Oh, wow. Yes, around the outside. Joris, wow, last of the late breakers, and it's just not enough, as he just carried a little bit too much entry speed, as we are down to 19 drivers. Marcel Pabst retiring, sadly, with some damage, I think, earlier on in the race. So down to 19 drivers. So they're falling like flies, everyone. In terms of the Ferrari strategy, they're doing a little bit in real life. I would have swapped the drivers, perhaps, if they're working as teammates. But yeah, Angelo, with the pace, I'd say, over everyone else at the moment, especially with that broken front wing. So you want clean air. You want to just try and get out in front. But the front two doing an immaculate job of driving at the moment. Conrad just maximising the exits of the corners to make sure that he doesn't have to deploy battery and he can lift and coast and keep that gap at about 5 to 7 tenths of a second. And same for Jensen Rosen. Just lifting and coasting up here into the hairpin, allowing Alejandro to maybe get a sniff of an overtake to the inside, but he's got that battery for the rest of the lap to defend. This is a strategic race, and it's all about the little details at this stage still.
Real close quarters racing, isn't it? You can throw a blanket over this group. They're so closely matched, heading down into the heavier braking zones. Luer a little bit wide of the apex. Krozen's been applying the blowtorch in the past couple of laps, as Rosen's had some of the pressure alleviated by Luera having to deal with both Haas cars of Krozen and Klaffenborg. Beisner without his teammate for company, but Liam Stevens, who's been quiet since the early stages, still right in the thick of this battle. I think Tycho Hardy's off the road, lost a couple of places, one to Alves, one to Alex Santana as well, who gets a bit of a wobble on coming out of turn number 8. So perhaps a mistake there for the Racing Bulls driver. Krozen into the pits, yes, Luera into the pit lane as well, along with Simon Engel. So these drivers reacting to D'Ortenzio, who with that undercut is a second and a bit off the back of Chonstos, 3.5 off the back of Keke, but is ahead of Victor Vidler, as that is Klaffenborg taking the escape road through turn number 1. Beisner, I think, has got a little bit more to deal with, though, because he's got a very mean-looking green machine behind of Liam Stevens, but he isn't close enough into the braking zone. That was very late for Beisner. Has to catch the slide at the apex. Now he might be under pressure into 4.
Lost all of that speed on the apex, literally coming to a standstill, and that means you're going to have to dump the battery through here, and that means that Liam Stevens can just absolutely curve up the inside, get the overtake done, a little bit of contact. Hopefully that front wing is intact. Yes, it is, but that is just a demonstration of one mistake, and you do not have enough to defend. You have to give up the position. That is a car going off, and that is Conrad. Yeah, bomb, just all, I think, miscalculation more than anything else. Just the front tires just giving up the ghost a little bit, and I think we're going to see a flurry of people into the pits. Conrad carries on.
Backwards, that's Farzo. Reverse entry drift into the penultimate corner. The Alpine goes in backwards, almost collects Tycho Hardy. A lot of drivers jumping into the pit. Stevens continues onwards. But what a dramatic sequence of corners that was. Big mistake, blunder from Conrad Bohm, who's thrown the lead of the race away. Now a net P4. Stevens continues on the medium tyres, same as Gal and Donoso on the hards. But Jensen Rosen coming out of the pit lane. That's a couple of drivers batting. I think that's Engel and Klaffenborg perhaps into turn 1. No, Joris Krozen, who pitted on the previous lap, just behind Luero and Kekeni. So here are your net race leaders on the road. Luero from Kekeni, from Krozen. Is that the order they'll be in? Down into turn number 3. Krozen has a hook to the outside. I think he was a little bit indecisive because Kekeni was hovering in the middle of the road. Then comes Engel. Then it is Rosen. Head of Chonstos, Klaffenborg and Bohm, who's lost out massively. Didn't quite catch what it was. I think he just got onto the gravel coming out of turn number 7. Threw him really wide and thrown him out of contention, do you think, for the race? Because he's now down in what? 7 potentially? Yes, he's got a tyre advantage, but he's given himself a hell of a lot of work to do.
Yeah, from what I saw, and it was only a few pixels, bear in mind, but it was just, I think, pushing too much on the in-lap, trying to get that extra lap in, and maybe a bit of overheating of the tyres. Krozen carrying on where he left off, just attacking everyone. It's Tamás ahead this time, and there's a little bit of a tyre advantage, but he's got to get those tyres up to temperature. They should be at this point. But everybody is still within that overtake mode. And ironically, for Angelo D'Ortenzio, pitting before to get the track position, and he's still staring at the back of his teammate, or he was before Nelson Alves overtook him. So that has not worked out, as we've got Jetson Rosen overtaking Simon Engel as well. So Rosen just demonstrating the pace, although he needs... Oh, in the background, that is a huge move, pushing each other. All three of them are fighting, and Klaffenbach has got the better of everyone there. He's in prime position to attack Engel right now, just benefiting and having the battery. He's going for the overtake, can't get it done, but I think Krozen got the move done there. He did indeed on Rosen. So just going... Oh, he's got it done now. Klaffenbach with the switchback. That is demonstrating the huge amount of opportunities these cars have, and the Ferraris not being able to get past it. It's not a race to be a Ferrari fan, is it, once again?
Kicking off massively there, though. Klaffenbach through on Engel. Punchy move down the inside. Bohm through on his teammate John Stoss as well, trying to make up for lost time after the big blunder on his in-lap. Bison is sitting and waiting, then comes Alves, then comes D'Ortenzio, who did change his front wing as Krozen this time makes the move stick on Kilkenny on the run down the main straight. Liam Stevens loses the race lead, still kicking off with John Stoss losing another place. Oldest times of anybody, barring Angelo D'Ortenzio, but still glued to the rear wing of the Scarlet Ferrari of Beisner. I'm going to fight this one out again, back up the hill into turn number 3, but has to bail out of it, needs to be careful of Nelson Alves. Rosen getting stuck in as well with Tamás Kilkenny side by side, little bit of banging of tyres between the Williams and the Cadillac. Eyeball to eyeball they remain as they head back down the hill, plummeting into turn number 4. Rosen with a tyre advantage of 2 laps, just has the line down the inside to keep hold of that 6th position on the road. A net P3 with the top 3 yet to make a stop. Klaffenbach again, punchy move to the inside, throws it down the inside of Kilkenny. We can't see what's going on because the camera angle's terrible, pushed to the extremities of the circuit, and Klaffenbach following in the footsteps of his teammate. Excellent move again as Kilkenny loses out.
Well, and up the inside as well, Simon Engel as well. Would he be able to get
can't end well, and it doesn't.
Contact!
Both of them.
Way.
Both of them off as I've accidentally clicked the wrong button at the wrong time. I got so excited I slammed down onto the keyboard.
I think strolled it.
He has Lance strolled it. What's happened? We need to know. Engel to the back of the pack. As continue with a 10-second penalty. Of all the buttons that I could have accidentally pressed, I clicked the Windows key. Absolutely destroyed with that one. But into the pits came Liam Stevens. Quintino into the pit lane as well. Leaves Tamás Gal and Fabrizio Donoso still out there. But on that move, as the 2 Red Bulls, just hold that thought, because that is going to be Luero taking away from Fabrizio Donoso, who is yet to stop in this race so far. But it was a big move down inside into the penultimate corner. Yes, Engel had the run, but I don't think it was ever really going to work, as Krozen helps himself there to the inside of Fabrizio Donoso.
Yeah, just trying to think back to that one. I mean, it's the penultimate corner. You can't really go side by side there. It's so flat out. It's blind apex as well and blind exit point. So you're always going to, even with people pitting, they have problems sometimes. So it's so tricky to get any move done there. I think it's just a case of a bit of a miscalculation. At the end of the day, both of them come off very much worse for the wear. I think I saw some wing being lost as well. So quite unfortunate. And that is Vidler up the inside, getting the move done on Kilkenny, so it's not it's going from bad to worse for Tamás Kilkenny. So yeah, that's a race to forget. A few people benefiting from that. Angelo D'Ortenzio moving up, Nelson Alves, and I think Santos was just ahead of that pack. So yeah, it's kicking off. And Fabrizio Donoso loses more positions, but I think he'll just be happy to be still remaining a little bit in the pack in contention. He was losing quite a bit of time not having the overtake mode, but he's a sitting duck at this point.
Oh, here comes Beisner as well. Late move down the inside of turn number 6. Dropping places very quick sharp here is Fabrizio Donoso. Doesn't want to stop yet either, because it's going to be a hell of a long stint on his mediums to get to the end. John Stoss and Alves now join the back of this little group. D'Ortenzio not too far in the distance either. But an interesting move, wasn't it? That's really ruined the chances of Engel and for Kilkenny. Interesting to see what the stewards think of that one post-race, but it's still Alejandro Luero, your net race leader. Tamás Gal continuing to soldier on. We need to watch the process of Liam Stevens is just behind. That's Nelson Alves picking up a place at the expense of Gabor Chonstos. Engel, I think, will retire and does. Down to 18 now. Surprising Quintino's still going, but you have to respect it as Alves not satisfied with one spot. Will take 8th place now off the hands of Fabrizio Donoso, who continues to tumble through the field. Wide he goes through turn 3. Chonstos will be lapping this one up, trying to force his way through into turn 4. And Donoso, smartly, as you would expect for a driver with that much experience and success, does not fight that one too hard. Down to P10 now, with D'Ortenzio the next on the scene.
D'Ortenzio needs to get a move on here because that gap is not safe in terms of the gap to Santos. You might end up losing the overtake mode. So it's going to be really interesting. He's got to get past Fabrizio Donoso. In fact, you might be better off delaying a little bit if you can through the penultimate turn, just so that you can get another lap of overtake mode. But it's very, very on the cusp there. So we'll have to wait and see how that pans out. You can look at the gap there. Fabrizio Donoso, 9/10 of a second now to Santos. And D'Ortenzio is 2/10 of a second behind there, as well as around the outside. Oh, my days. Conrad Baum just, battling with Klaffenbach, and I thought that was going to go for another spin, and that's opened up the door for Beisner to go past as well, not having the intuition to leap to the inside. I'm just thinking that he might be preserving, and there goes the overtake. Angelo D'Ortenzio, that is possibly one of the most important overtakes of the race, as he's got a 1/10 gap to close up right now, and he needs to close it by the end of this lap, otherwise he might be falling by the wayside in this turn. And Santana thinking the same thing as well. He cannot afford to be stuck in the sector 2 behind Fabrizio Donoso. This is a very dangerous position to be in for Donoso. He has got every right to be there, but every driver is going to be going for the dive bomb.
Don't be alarmed by the nose job currently on the front of Angelo D'Ortenzio's car. Does have his full front wing intact as Tamas Gal into the pits to get off his hard compound tyres. That will hand Luera the lead of the race. Liam Stevens with the freshest hard tyres of anybody is going to be a man on a mission in the last 15 laps of the Austrian Grand Prix. Luera to the lead from Krozen, Rosen, Klaffenbach, and your Polser to Conrad Bohm, who led the opening 14 or so laps of this race before a self-inflicted mistake has given himself a lot of heavy lifting to do in the closing stage. He's got to deal with Lucas Beisler as well, who's not too far away, as that is Stevens to the inside of Santana. Rosen battling away with Klaffenbach, trying to make it a Haas 2-3 just behind Krozen, who's giving his teammate the slipstream. Klaffenbach on the inside. Has he got the move done? A little bit of contact as they reach the apex, but Klaffenbach muscles his way through. Has Rosen got anything with battery to burn on the run through 5 and into turn 6? The answer is no. Just behind it's Bohm still massively under the cosh with Beisner right there, but it is the two Haas cars continuing to move forward and work in tandem.
I think, well, I mean, they have to, really. They're kind of stuck in the train. If they start battling more and more, then they are going to be just doing each other a disservice, using up the tyres. They've got to just play it a little bit sort of conservative at this stage of the race. They're in a very good position, and they can bag a lot of points here. I just want to say as well, Santana, I think, lost out on the overtake mode this lap, so Liam Stevens breezing through to take that position of P10, but they're very lucky to still be in the overtake window, and there was an opportunity for them to battle, and that is Lucas Beisner maybe going for the overtake. He doesn't like this turn 3, but he will be going for it, as Conrad Bohm again on that braking zone. It just had a little bit of rotation and locked the rear brakes, and that's put him under pressure from Nelson. Nelson to the inside in the Williams, and Conrad's just going to be pushed over the curb here, and all the way over the curb. He just couldn't get that turning. Is he dealing with a bit of an understeer issue? Is the car balance going away from him toward the middle part of this race? That is 2 mistakes we've seen. 3 mistakes if you count the mistake at the hairpin, just down to the car maybe misbehaving in terms of the handling. I want to point out as well, shout out to the Ferrari mechanics. They've invented the Macarena wing, now they've invented the Wi-Fi wing.
Nicely done. Ferrari with their innovations once again. Again, giving us the worst camera angles possible. D'Ortenzio into the pits again. So is this the two-stop strategy that he's trying to pull to maybe give himself a better shot? Has the oldest tyres of anybody. But D'Ortenzio going for the alternate strategy. Should be, is that a set of medium tyres? No, it's another set of the hard compound tyres.
Is it?
For D'Ortenzio to take to the end. So he went for the harder allocation. Well, wait and see. We return to the leaders because that's Luera under pressure. Krozen to the inside of turn number 3. But couldn't make it work to move up from position number 2. And D'Ortenzio with a 10-second penalty. That is probably that done with any hopes of trying to make that 2-stop strategy work. He definitely fixed his wing at the first stop. As that's Liam Stevens still on the move. Freshest tyres of anybody, barring Tamas Gowton. Of course, D'Ortenzio now back up into 8th place in between the two Mercedes cars. Now tackling Bone just up the road. He's been a little bit all over the place in the past few laps. A couple of mistakes into the heavy braking zones. Liam Stevens will be looking to try and lap that one up. But still Luero from the two Haas-Cars. Crozen looking racy here.
They are looking like they just want to get past that Red Bull. And I tell you what, Crozen off the exit of this final turn every single time, just gaining a car length. And look how close he is, lifting and coasting, getting that battery nicely regen, getting a nice exit as well. Although I say that, over the sausage curve, losing about half a car length and under pressure from Klaffenbach as well. So will we go for it? Will we go for it? No, not quite. Just sitting back once again as Alejandro having to go deep into the turn, and that is Liam Stevens on the run as well, still battling with Conrad Bohm. So these two drivers in the same ballpark of pace and not wanting to give anything up to each other, and that is the move. There it is, Crozen up the inside and just fighting it out, but Alejandro had enough speed around the outside to fight it, and I thought we were about to see Klaffenbach up the inside as well, but the Haas drivers are working together now and just defending those positions. Smart driving.
Liam Stevens is a real threat here. 3-lap fresher tyres, 4-lap fresher tyres than everybody in front of him. Watch for the green machine in the final 11 laps of this race. Crozen again really close into the penultimate corner. Klaffenbach acting at the moment as Crozen's rear gunner. Beisner putting Rosen under pressure. Then comes Alves and Stevens, who'll be desperate to try and get another place, pick up another one, cross another one off the list. Is this the move into turn number 1? Not a regulation overtaking point, real pinch point of the apex. Crozen bails out of it, might fall into the clutches of his teammate. Klaffenbach definitely arriving on the scene with a lick of speed. Are we going to be 3 wide into turn 3? No, we are not. But it is Liam Stevens on the move further back. Ain't no stopping that Aston Martin now, as he gets another place at the expense of Nelson Alves.
This is starting to heat up to the point of boiling point, and some drivers are going to get the short straw in this race, but who will it be? At the moment they are keeping it clean, but as that lap counter ticks down, you'll start to see more and more aggressive overtakes. And I tell you what, Joris Crozen, I think, has tried every single overtaking opportunity around this track for the moment. There is not a turn where he's been up the inside or around the outside, and I think just putting Alejandro under pressure, as that is the other Ferrari, that is Lucas just getting punted out wide. Liam Stevens moving up the positions once again.
Stevens not holding back here. Superb move down the inside of the penultimate corner. Thought he was going to try it on the exit to try and steal another one. Pocket pinch Jensen Rosen to take 4th place away from the Williams. I think he's going to manage it up into turn 3. Absolutely romping along here is the Aston Martin, looking to try and pick up back-to-back race victories and potentially move into the championship lead. Championship leader, though, to the inside to try and take the race lead. Gets it slightly wrong. Carnage has ensued behind. I can hear contact all over the show. Nelson Alves off the road in the Williams. Someone's going backwards. It's Klaffenbach who's dropped it out of the corner. Must have been a bit of contact involved. Crozen still can't take the lead away from Luero. Everything clearly kicked off there, though. Stevens in P4, still behind Rosen. Alves was off the road. What the hell has happened there for Klaffenbach to end up in 13th and about 5 cars to take a trip into the runoff area?
I think what might have happened is just some contact on the apex, and Klaffenbach has got spun round because of that contact. I think just going for a move up the inside, perhaps. And then everyone's had to take avoiding action. But obviously, in taking avoiding action, you bump into other cars. And I think we're lucky to only see one driver really falling down the order. But for Klaffenbach, that is going to hurt. And that is going to be just a sting to end this race. We'll have to wait and see whether he can get back up. But for Crozen now, we've got no teammate defending behind you. And Rosen has been so good this race in terms of racecraft. Liam Stevens as well, heating up as he goes for a move for a provisional podium positions here. The Aston Martin really working to great effect. And I tell you what, that car is coming on song for the last 8 laps of this Grand Prix.
He's got 4-lap fresher tyres compared to Luero and compared to Crozen. Stevens, you would have to say, the favourite at this stage with the tyre offset and the pace that Aston Martin has got. Williams 4-5 now with Rosen dropping back. Tycho Hardy battling away with Alex Santana. Terrible camera angle, not for the first time, probably not for the last time. Hardy's very quietly gone about his business here. Wasn't in a great spot around 15 laps ago, but quietly got himself into a fairly decent position to try and pick up a few points inside the top 10. Remember, top 15 score points in this championship. Alves under pressure from Beisner through the penultimate corner. I wonder if the carnage was ensued by Alves maybe missing his braking zone a little bit as Santana into the pits. The clouds have just started to build. You can see heavy cloud cover now just up ahead. Could we be seeing a little bit of a sprinkling of rain? As that Stevens off the road, pushing very hard, pushing too hard as he falls out of track limits. Could be under pressure, but Rosen a little bit too far back. Luera again having to think about it because Crozen putting him under the microscope for the fifth lap in a row. Is that rain now falling? This could be a grandstand finish. We'll go on board. We look for the streaks of the halo. Yes, that is rain coming, everybody. And that might alleviate the advantage Liam Stevens has gotten. And into the pits it was... who was it that stopped? I can't remember now, but it was Santana, wasn't it, who put on the medium tyres. That could have been a blunder if this rain falls heavy enough.
Yeah, you'll have to wait and see. Probably a couple of laps at least until you have to think about changing. It's not falling very, very heavy, but this is another case where I'm going to need a popcorn refill for this one because the race was heating up and now it's about to cool off with the tyres getting super cooled and Crozen practically pushing Alejandro around the penultimate couple of turns. And you can see here, surely they're going to go for an overtake. Surely they can't just sit behind. Liam Stevens is just way too quick for this one. Stevens just regenerating the battery. You can see those tyres just with that extra grip, the extra traction. This might be a 3 wide. Stay tuned, drum roll. Alejandro goes to the inside. Crozen goes to the middle. Crozen goes to the inside, just manages to get the gap. A switch back by Alejandro has gone wrong for Crozen. That's Stevens through. That might be Rosen through as well. Just locking up, I think, there into the braking zone as the grip diminishes.
Rosen out braking himself. Off the road he went. Boom. Race continues to unravel with a 3-second penalty now for the second Mercedes. Trying to attack his teammate. Got Tycho Hardy to deal with. Kokeni under pressure from Vidler and Klaffenborg, who's still trying to salvage something in the background. Not the first time he's gone for that move into turn 6. This occasion it's not successful. But Joris Crozen making a mess of that. Tried to send it down the inside into turn 3. Got his braking all wrong. Took a trip off the road and handing second place on a silver platter to Liam Stevens, who is now the dead set favourite, you would think, to win this race, even if the rain does arrive. As Tycho Hardy now through on Conrad Bone, who's heading into the pits. Could this be for a set of intermediate tyres? We'll have to wait and see. The drops on the camera lens getting ever larger as there's Stevens to the inside of turn 1, trying to pick his moment as he picks up the lead of the race at the expense of Luero. But is it going to be one and done just yet? Into the slipstream, tuck the Red Bull and the Haas car behind. Stevens has to go defensive into turn 3. Long way round for Luera. Can he keep it on the road? Can he try the cutback? He's got to be careful of Crozen, who's nipping at his heels as well. Still Aston Martin from Red Bull from Haas, then the 2 Williams cars, with the intermediate tyres starting to be bolted on.
Smart move from Stevens, just using the advantage of the tyre while you have it. You might only have these tyres on for another lap or 2, so best to burn them up right now. I think they're going to have to make a pit stop with maybe 2 or 3 laps to go. It's looking like the grip is completely vanishing at the moment. Many drivers going wide there through that long left-hander, and just you can see the rain falling more and more on the screen. Might be a grandstand finish this one. Who's going to pit? Who's going to blink first? We've got so much to gain and so much to lose, and Alejandro is getting dropped. Alejandro is getting absolutely dropped like a lead weight right now. That's overtake mode gone. That is Crozen also going to have to be fighting to get it back as Stevens clears off into the distance.
Suddenly these two hoping for a miracle, and a mistake from Liam Stevens, who's checking out in front, stretching his legs and putting some time and some space and some distance between himself and his main contenders. Could be back-to-back victories for the Aston Martin with just 5 laps to go, but throw the wild card of a sprinkling of rain in the closing stages. Chonstos and Klaffenborg electing to jump onto the intermediate tyres at the end of lap 31. 10-second penalty for Chonstos crossing the white line at pit lane exit. Not sure if that's a game glitch or whether it's just a very severe penalty for crossing over the white line. 2 Williams cars still in hot pursuit with Beisner, who's been quiet in the last 10 laps or so, very much in the ballpark at the back of this group. But Stevens continues to waltz away out in front. No grip, no confidence, no traction for Luero on the run into turn number 6. Crozen still pushing him, begging him to try and get a move on here. Wobble for the Haas driver himself. What is the tactic on the tyres here, though? Quintino retires in the pit lane, 17 left running. Liam Stevens 2 seconds clear, stays out, as does this group behind it. Looks like these guys have made their bed. They're going to line it until the end of the race, but that is wide for Luero. This could finally be the opportunity for Crozen. Had about 10 attempts at trying to make it work. Eyeball to eyeball, side by side, and it's Crozen into one.
Santos not gaining time on the tyres. Has lost 0.3 of a second this lap as they're still going to battle. Crozen having a bit of a bad exit with that switchback. It's not going to be all his way. Alejandro Luero has a chance to go up the inside. Doesn't take it though. The confidence not there. The grip not there for both of them. Both of them having a little bit of a wobble on the exit. That's going to allow Rosen maybe into this fight as we've got more drivers. That's wow. That is Conrad retired from the session. I didn't expect that one. He's just absolutely dropped the race, and it's just gone from bad to worse from the start. And that is just the nature of Formula One. But look at that gap now, 2.9 seconds. Liam Stevens clearing off still, using the grip of those tyres. And the wobbles, you have to pit surely. But Santos is not gaining the time. He's still lost 0.2 of a second this lap. It's not enough of a delta to warrant it. You've got so much of a gap to close in. It's so marginal. Everyone continues at the moment. Stevens continues, Crozen continues, Alejandro follows him, and everyone does in this train.
Right on a knife edge as we look at it. The driver that the leaders need to be worried about, it isn't Gabor Chonstos, because they've got a penalty at the moment and we're not sure whether it's going to be removed or not. They need to definitely think about Klaffenbach, who's 3 seconds back down the road. 3 laps to go. I don't think, unless the weather deteriorates to some tune in the final 5 minutes or so of this race, we are going to see those Inter-runners catch the leaders, not least Liam Stevens, who continues to soldier away out in front. Luero under pressure, trying to cling on to a podium place. Got the 2 Williams cars potentially at his mercy. Rosen, position number 4. Alves, P5. Beisner and Tycho Hardy, who once again done a really good job in this race. Angelo D'Ortenzio, with the 2-stop strategy, could still pick up a decent handful of points. Not that far away from the group of drivers in front. There is D'Ortenzio. Got much fresher tyres, 9-lap fresher, 10-lap fresher. Gabor, we think, is going to be removed along with Angelo. So there's an opportunity for D'Ortenzio, with all the trials and tribulations that he's had, to maybe still pick up a top 5. Oh. That is if he doesn't throw it into the catch fencing with a slide through turn 8.
That's the advantage of having the fresher tyres. The delta will be even bigger with the fading grip because you can push the car harder. You can have more confidence, and that grip will drop off maybe a lap or 2 later. Look at the amount of time he's gained. 5 car lengths just in the last sector as we go on to the penultimate lap right now. And it is looking like the intermediate tyres still have only gained about a second. It's not going to be enough. The delta is dropping, but not at all. And look at this, Angelo just completely cruising onto the back of this train, but up the inside, Hardy goes for the move up to P6, pushing Lucas out of the way, but that leaves the gap for Angelo D'Ortenzio to get past both of them with the switchback. Clever driving. Can he make up any more positions?
All the grip in the world. This could be a bank raid here. Daylight robbery perhaps for D'Ortenzio, who only 7 or 8 laps ago was down in P15. Alves loses it. Does he hit the Ferrari? I think he slammed into the side of him. You can see some bodywork flying up. Yes. Right-hand side of the front wing gone. Track conditions really deteriorating now. That gap that was 10 seconds to Gabor Chonstos, now only 6. Watch out for this one. Rosen all over the road, as is Ortenzo, and through goes the Ferrari, and into the wall goes Jensen Rosen. Luero all over the show as well. He's got a puncture. So that's why Luero's got problems. Drops it into the penultimate corner. Another one taken out of contention. And that will just put a few eyes on stalks for the drivers trying to extend these tyres to the end of the race. D'Ortenzio to P5. And he could still potentially finish on the podium here.
What is going on? What is going on these last 2 laps? This is like everything is imploding. Look at that traction up into P4. Hardy gets completely mugged on the exit of the first turn, and Nelson is having to defend all the way to the inside. But look at the traction difference. D'Ortenzio just able to get the pedal to the metal. Crozen has a gap of 2.4 seconds. I think he's safe, but this is battle. This is the last possible opportunity. There's going to be easy into the braking zone on the curb. There's going to be no traction. No way you're going to drift it to the inside. Oh, I thought he was going to do the rallycross maneuver.
Crozen
Not
off.
quite, but Crozen is indeed off, and that might be a swap of position. No, he's still on the track. Still on the track, so Crozen continues, but the gap has halved effectively. And Angelo D'Ortenzio, what can he say? This is incredible. Stevens is off as well on the last turn.
Got to be careful here. He's got the strategy right. The Inter-runners have arrived, though, because Johnston's trying to pick up some late places. Stevens will go back to back. Crozen, I think, will just hold on to second ahead of D'Ortenzio. What a strategy from himself and the Ferrari team. He needs to be careful he doesn't drop it over the line. Through goes Alves to take fourth. Then comes Hardy, Bison, Gal. What happened to Johnston at the end? The penalties mean we're not going to see his full position. What an ending to the race that was. Liam Stevens almost threw it in the bin right at the end. We lost Luero and Rosen from contention. Not sure if Rosen had a puncture, but he did go wide through turn 4 into the gravel on the last lap. Luero with the puncture on the penultimate lap. Stevens takes it. Superb drive, superb overcut strategy. Crozen keeping his head when other people couldn't. And Angelo D'Ortenzio, where is he? He's 11th classified, but we think his 10-second penalty is going to be taken away. Absolute masterclass on the strategy there.
I am absolutely mesmerized by what I've just experienced. That has to be the most chaotic end to a race I have witnessed. Everybody just getting to the end of their tire life, and a certain Ferrari just carving through the field. Can you believe it? Fastest lap by Gabriel Quintino, just using the tires to his advantage. Hardy with driver of the day, having a good recovery race, it must be said. Fabrizio Donoso with the most overtakes on the different strategy, and Hardy with the cleanest driver. I must say, kept it out of trouble, didn't he? Here are your full race results.
Stevens goes back to back, wins it by 7.5 seconds with the overcut. Joris Crozen P2 ahead of Nelson Alves, who won't take that podium place because it was Angelo D'Ortenzio with the preface that that penalty should be removed. Took it in the end. Not sure where Gabor Chonstos finished. I think he was behind Victor Vidler. And Chonstos was in a good position. Got up to P7. I think he had a 3-second corner cutting penalty as well. So Hardy, Bison, Gal, Santana, Claffenborg, good recovery after the problems earlier. A lot of retirees though. Rosen Luero, boom, the pole sitter unravelled. Contino Engel, Paps, Tomasetto, and Francesco Largo. I am sweating. It's apparently the middle of the night as well. Happened there. We've lost all of the sun. I can't turn the light on. So that's the end.
The
of that
rain
one.
has happened.
The rain's
at Tom's broadcasting room.
We're gonna have to try and work this out on the fly.
What an incredible! There we go. And the Lord giveth light.
What a race that was, though. I mean, it was exciting before the rain came. You can see how sweaty I am at the moment because of the temperature and also the heat that we were seeing on the circuit. Yeah, really exciting one. Liam Stevens, back-to-back race wins. Excellent job. So many drivers doing a really good job in that race. Some drivers less so, and they'll be thinking what might have been after being in good positions. Hopefully, we'll have a few interviews as well. Oh my goodness, the championship thrown up in the air there. Great recovery from some of the drivers that were out of position. And we've got the top 4 in the championship, I think. All of them inside the top 6, potentially.
I think you're correct on that. Yeah, I do think you're correct. And it's just a case of, like we said at the start, this race is a strategic one. You can't win it at the start, and some drivers getting wing damage. And it just threw their race into pieces. I think what could have happened if a few drivers were in different positions, I'm thinking also about Klaffenbach with that unfortunate spin as well. It could have been even more chaotic, and I'm not sure if that's a good thing or an absolutely daunting thing to contemplate, really, because I think as you could tell, we couldn't keep up with that. There was no way that you could describe the amount of stuff happening on screen, and I think people ran out of tires at the worst possible situation when the rain was intensifying and you just couldn't find any traction, couldn't find any braking, couldn't find any turning. And for Stevens out in front, still with a bit of tires left, you saw 7 seconds gap at the end of that race, just cruising off into the distance.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do is hopefully we're going to do some interviews. If people are watching, and this is slightly unfortunate, if we can give John the perms, because he doesn't have the perms at the minute, so we're not in the commentary box. We're in a private call. So I'm going to move over. We might lose John for a moment, but hopefully everybody watching, I'll do a wave to make sure that you're here. We can get John the Perm so he can join me in the commentary box, and then we can conduct our interview. So we might say goodbye to John's voice for a little bit, but he's still going to be on the screen, so you don't need to worry about that one. But yeah, really exciting one to round out this first block of 4 races for the first season. As I can't multitask, and I've clicked the wrong button there as well. It's all kicking off. Again, we've... oh, well, that's come up. There we go. John's back on screen as well, as we wait for him to emerge. But 4 races done. The championship battle is looking interesting. Really good drive from Taika Hardy, under the radar drive from Taika Hardy, picked up driver of the day for the game. Angelo D'Ortenzio. Shout out to Conan Martins, who I think you're his engineer, who's done an excellent job with that strategy, get him up onto the podium. As nobody's joined us in the waiting room. John has got perms. Are we going to see John jumping in? Come on, if you can hear me, John. Hopefully you're watching, so you know this. John, hello. Yes, John's here. John's
I have
back.
got you. All good.
We lost about a minute, but all is go.
Thank you ever so much to people who sorted that out.
Well done. Speedy turnaround, everybody. But yes, as we complete that first block of 4, I mean, we've set the bar pretty high so far with 4 really exciting races.
Certainly have. I mean, you have to contemplate that people are trying to score points for a championship, and at the end of the day, they are running every single race, it seems, as if it's their last race. And so I think there's certain drivers that maybe towards the middle point of this championship are going to go, I could have done with those 10 points that I could have scored. So it's an interesting prospect, but like in qualifying, it's all about that extra 1%. And some drivers at the moment have it, other drivers are looking for it.
Absolutely. Such fine margins. We saw that with the punctures in the last lap and a half. Jensen Rosen, I think, getting caught out. Definitely Alejandro Luero with that puncture that threw himself out of contention. All kicking off as we turned the wick right up to maximum and then broke the knob as we continued to try and turn it up even further in those last couple of laps. Waiting to see if anybody does want to have a chat. It'd be great if we could hear from our top 3, or at least somebody that had a pretty exciting race. We'll hold our horses, the drivers probably want a little bit of time for themselves.
They're probably catching their breath for a start.
Definitely. With everything that kicked off in the closing stages.
It happened within 2 laps, didn't it? We saw those first specks of rain, and then within 2 laps, they were all skedaddling over the track with no grip. So I think it's caught them by surprise, and if they're chatting to race engineers at any point, they're probably having a big old debrief as to how they can avoid that situation in the future. I don't see how they can. It's just luck of the draw. But yeah, that's one to contemplate. That's for sure.
Yeah, and while we wait for the drivers, what we will do is we'll go back through the calendar, see what we've got on the menu for the next few weeks. Obviously, not here in 7 days' time. The 11th of August, that would be break week. Then we will reconvene on the 18th for the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka. Then Spa, Bahrain, and the Circuit of the Americas for our second block of 4. And then our final quartet, Saudi Arabia, absolute barnstorm. I cannot wait for that one. Mexico, the hallowed Brazilian bitumen of Interlagos. And then Abu Dhabi, as we Abu Dhabi do, making that 4 weeks on the trot that we've come up with that. Taking us to the end of the season, where we will hopefully crown our champion, although it could happen in Brazil. I'm expecting it won't, though, with how hotly contested this looks to be.
Tell you what, just looking at that calendar, Bahrain and Texas might actually be some very interesting tracks with the battery deployment, because obviously you've got the Sector 2 of those tracks, or well, Sector 1 actually for Texas, but also Sector 2 a little bit with that infield section as well. Very difficult to overtake on. And so with the battery, you might see some moves like we've seen in Austria today, where you're not expecting it, the drivers aren't expecting it, and they'll chuck a move up the inside. So I think we've seen in this race, but we've seen it for the first 3 rounds as well, that it's kind of thrown racing onto its head, and some drivers are adapting to it a little bit faster. I mean, for example, Klasva and Bot going, or both Hasses to be fair, going for overtakes that I've never seen before, and I probably won't see again for quite a while, because they just seem to have confidence oozing from everywhere, let's say. And I think that means that you're going to have to work on your racecraft a lot more than in previous iterations.
And at the moment, it does look like those 4, doesn't it? Stevens, Liam Stevens, Taika Hardy, Angelo D'Ortenzio, and Joris Kroos, at the moment, are the four that have emerged from this first quartet of races as the perennial contenders to try and take this champion. We'll see if anybody else can make a run in the middle third of the season, but at the moment looks like it's going to be those four. And if they can all be closely matched and we can continue to have this title fight progress, we're going to be in for a banger.
Yes, and equally, if they mess up, perhaps they'll have to do a comeback drive like we saw D'Ortenzio do today. So that is one of those things that you just have to keep the mental game going. And I think there will always be one driver that sort of has a great start to the season and then starts second-guessing it. And then it starts just getting away from them. And when you only have half a tenth to lose before you start getting into trouble, that it puts you on a precarious knife edge. But I tell you what, for Stevens today, that's got to be a vote of confidence. Just the grip that he was able to find, the pace from that change onto the hard compound tires. I tell you what, whatever he's doing on those hard compound tires, drivers will want to copy that. Drivers will want to study that because he's found an extra tenth of a second that other people couldn't find.
Because what we've seen in the first three races, I'm giving it maybe another 60 seconds to see if anybody wants to join us for a chat, but what we've seen in the first three races are that the undercut's incredibly powerful. It basically won Sergio Sabrino round one in Australia because everybody got caught behind battling amongst themselves. He got a big undercut, got the track position, didn't look back. China and Silverstone, it was a little bit closer. Liam Stevens, this isn't the first time he's gone for that big tyre offset. Almost worked for him in China. Did work for him at Silverstone. And then he's definitely got the win. Yes, it was post-race in Silverstone, but that doesn't really matter too much. I don't think, though, we're going to have anybody joining us for a chat, which is a little bit disappointing, but c'est la vie. We will continue on our way. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on this fine Tuesday, or it might be a Wednesday. Don't know where you are in the world, but yeah, fun hanging out. Good race, as it has been for the first three, and will hopefully continue to be for the rest of the season. But Mr. John Harris, thank you very much for stepping up in the absence of Donkey Kong, Mr. TK. And John, where can people find you on an internet if they want to see what you're getting up to?
On all social medias, it should be the same tag, is amusing, and you can usually find me wrapped around a tree or in a wall somewhere. If it's a Formula 1 game in a wall, most definitely. I spin these cars every two corners, apparently. But I must say, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you for everybody for giving confidence in me to do this broadcast. You know, it's big shoes that I'm stepping into because I know TK is just the master of all in terms of commentary. So, yes, it's been a pleasure, and what a good race. I couldn't have wished for better, could I?
Jumped in for a great one. Make sure you check out John, who's going to be upside down in some kind of vehicle at some point in the next week or so. If you're interested in what I'm doing, Wilker.com's Instagram and TikTok. Make sure you follow the Ventauri social media accounts as well. But with a week's break, we'll be back in a fortnight's time for the Japanese Grand Prix at the legendary Suzuka circuit. How will the battery marathon work around there? It remains to be seen. But until then, have a wonderful couple of weeks. Drivers, if you're still here, enjoy your week off, at least from this series. I'm sure there'll be other league racing going on for a lot of them. But we will see you very soon.